Of course.
Yes.
That might be my out.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Just
What I'm gonna do, I just wanna at least set it up, just to get the thing off.
gotta keep going. We can't just drop it.
Oh, you're right.
I mean, I'd like to get out of it myself, but until we get somebody who will, we're stuck. You know, I've got a minute left, and then we can start the Zoom.
This conference will now be recorded.
I think it's
Just like his, like the chief's old car. Oh.
all right. Welcome to the 19th of April's meeting. Please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag roll call, please.
Councilmember Bellinger,
Here.
Councilmember Crumick,
Here.
Councilmember Swift,
Here?
Mayor Pro Tem Legero,
Here.
and Mayor Alves.
Here. All right, this evening, we're going to start off with a presentation, it looks like. Is that correct?
Correct, the Citizen of the Month presentation.
All right, let's read it. Is Ann Shattuck here this evening? Would you please come to the podium? Thank you. And we have a certificate for you, and I'm going to read it to you. City of Escalon wishes to congratulate. And you can come here if you choose, that's fine. Shattuck. This certificate of special recognition is awarded to Ann Shattuck in honor of her continued advocacy for the senior citizen community of Escalon. I commend you for the fortitude in changing the ways seniors live in retirement by creating the Senior Fun Bunch Group, a weekly walking program driving conversation on senior housing, development, and for being a helpful and friendly face for the citizens to look up to. It's always nice to have people that care enough to give of their time, you know? There's a lot of people that talk, but very few people do. And I appreciate what you do, and I appreciate the fact you not only talk about it, you do it. You are an inspiration, and I hope you can inspire more people, Ann. This is your certificate, and this is a medal on behalf of the city of Escalon. I hope that you put that in a good place. It means a lot to me to give to you. Congratulations. And would you like to say something on behalf of yourself and what you've done for us? Ann, would you like to say a few words?
Well, you know, the theme for our,
And please do it in the microphone so we can all share.
I'm so not used to this microphone. Yes, I would like to mention that the theme for our activity this month is sowing a seed. And that's exactly what happened, is, you know, I just asked, why don't we have senior activities here? And then Mayor Robert Swift said, well, you're it. So, and Tammy, who did not know me at all, still made sure that something went out on the water bill, asking for help. And guess what? I got the most wonderful team in the world. Peggy, stand up. Tina, stand up. Cindy, stand up. And Lois as well. That's what makes it. And then my family, who's in the back, who always gives me support. So thank you. This means so much to me. Thank you very
for being an
much.
inspiration.
Well deserved.
Okay, next item, I believe, is a presentation by Jilton on SB 1383.
Yes, Mayor and Council, tonight we have Tracy Norris with the Jilton, and she has a presentation for you.
Yes, my name is Tracy Norris, as she said, and I also would like to point out that we have with us tonight Richard Jilton, Savannah Jilton, and in the back, Raquel Sanders and Tessa Jilton. And on behalf of everyone, I'd like to thank you for time on the agenda to discuss our SB 1383 implementation strategy with you. And I look forward to our discussion. So really today I want to start off and talk about prior recycling legislation, give you a really brief SB 1383 summary. I'm sure you've been briefed on it a lot already. Talk about that. Talk about a high diversion material recovery facility, a MRF, a high diversion MRF. You're going to hear me say that a bit. Talk about what that is. Talk about our composting facility. Get into our recommended approach to implementing SB 1383, and then allow time for any questions or conversations that you'd like to have. So really, council members, the reason I'm here today, the reason we're here today is to talk about our partnership. It's all about our partnership. You received a letter from Richard in January that talked about all our prior legislation related to recycling that we've helped you implement, and you've got that letter with a lot of details in there, but just briefly I'll go over them. AB 939, Integrated Waste Management Act, which required each city or county to reduce material going to the landfill by 50%. And as a result of this legislation prompted many jurisdictions to implement curbside recycling at that time. And then there was AB 341, mandatory commercial recycling, in which businesses in those multifamily units greater than 5, generating 4 or more cubic yards of solid waste were required to recycle. And the goal there was to reduce methane gas. And then more recently, we have AB 1826, the mandatory organics recycling, in which any business generating organic waste was required to divert that waste from the landfill and turn it into compost. And really, we want SB 1383 implementation to be no different. We are here to partner with you. We want to give you the assurance of knowing that we'll continue to provide you the level of service that we have previously and going forward. So we're here to just continue and let that partnership grow. Oh, I went too far. There we go. So SB 1383, as you may know, is the most significant waste reduction act to be adopted by the state of California in 30 years. And at Jilton, the way we like to think about SB 1383 is the Pac-Man from the video games from the 80s, if you all can remember that. Because it has come along and gobbled up all of those prior recycling mandates that I just reviewed with you. SB 1383, which is an unfunded state mandate, establishes a statewide target to reduce the methane gas that's being emitted from our landfills by pulling out the organic waste and keeping it from going there by 75% by the year 2025. Beginning in 2025 and beyond, California is allowed to dispose of only 5.7 million tons of organic waste annually. To put the enormity of this task in perspective, the state of California disposed of approximately 27 million tons of organic waste in 2017. So in other words, Californians must reduce the organic waste going into the landfills by 20 million tons a year. It's a big number, yes. And just by way of background, SB 1383 defines organic waste to include green materials, wood waste, fiber such as paper and cardboard, food scraps, food soiled paper, and then landscaping and pruning waste is covered under this bill. So just a few quick key implementation dates with SB 1383. At the beginning of 2022, jurisdictions are required to have their programs in place because the regulation becomes enforceable. 2 years after that, jurisdictions are going to be looked at to enforce to provide enforcement around any compliant, or issues, excuse me, any entities that are non-compliant, I'm getting tongue-tied. They're required to have enforcement techniques in place for those that aren't complying with SB 1383. And then 1 year later, collectively as a state, California needs to achieve that 75% diversion target. And under SB 1383, jurisdictions will be required to adequately resource each of these 6 areas. And as I've indicated here in the presentation with the red circle, Jilton is here to help you provide organic waste collection services to both your residences and your businesses. So I want to talk briefly a little bit about organic waste collection services. So there's the 3-container service, which requires materials to be separated at the source, or what we refer to as source separated. And this level of service relies on our generators, our residences and our businesses, to properly get that waste in the proper can. Then there's the 2-container service, which Jilton currently provides. And under SB 1383, the material in that black can, that black or gray can, is required to be taken to a high diversion material recovery facility where 75% of that organic waste is recovered. And this level of service is requiring or looking at mechanical separation to adequately get the waste into the right stream and out of our landfill. But the reality, as I'll show later in the presentation, is that even with a 3-container system, mechanical separation of waste is necessary to achieve that 75% diversion target that we're being looked at by the state to implement and have in place. So both history and recent waste characteristic studies have shown us that relying solely on residences and businesses to properly separate organic materials is not enough to achieve SB 1383 mandates. Therefore, in the residential and commercial organic material stream, we are shifting our focus from our customers and our drivers for correct separation to mechanical separation of materials. A high diversion material recovery facility is in fact necessary to ensure that 75% diversion rate and to clean up our compost. Going to a 3-cart system will not alleviate the contamination problem, as we cannot effectively control what people put in each of those containers. And we can definitely educate them, but we can't really control it at the end of the day. And this is seen in the Bay Area, and we all know in the Bay Area that zero waste and recycling is very, very top of mind over there. And in the Bay Area, waste management companies that have a 3-can system take those cans to their high diversion material recovery facility and separate the materials properly. And to illustrate this, we have a video to show you a high diversion MRF in action in San Jose.
Have you ever wondered what happens to your household garbage after it's collected? Green Waste Recovery is a collection and processing provider for several California communities and operates a materials recovery facility, MRF for short, in San Jose. Come along with us for a tour of the facility. It all starts at the scale house, where trucks must be weighed before being directed to their designated tipping floor. The tipping floor is where trucks dump the material they've collected. There are 2 tipping floors. In the Municipal Solid Waste MSW building, one is for garbage collected from houses, and the other is for garbage collected from apartment complexes. The tipping floor is a large open space where trucks can easily offload and material can be easily moved. Green Waste employees set aside any large or bulky items for processing. The remaining debris is loaded with a tractor into the metering bin. The metering bin provides an effective way of feeding material into the material recovery system. A rotating drum with hammer bits begins opening bags while regulating material flow. The first stop for the debris is the pre-sort station. Here, manual sorters stand by the conveyor belt to remove large items and contaminants by hand. These items are tossed into openings that lead down to bunkers for storage. The material continues up to screens where the material from both lines merge. The screens separate the material by size. The top conveyor separates items that are 6 inches or larger in size. The middle conveyor separates materials between 6 inches and 2 inches in size. Everything smaller than 2 inches in size falls to the lower conveyor. Food scraps such as apple cores, eggshells, and chicken bones end up on this line. The top and center conveyor streams continue for further processing. The lower conveyor, which has organics and compostable material, is sent to the compost pile. Next is the knee-hot air separator, which separates light and heavy materials. The air separator unit uses gravity and an air blower to separate material based on density. The light items are transported over the machinery and continue on to the polishing screens. The heavier items fall to the lower conveyor down to the compost stream for further processing. The heavy items on the compost line proceed to a huge magnet which removes metals from the stream. Then, the material flows through our dual-arm Max AI, which removes plastics and aluminums from the stream. Manual sorting is the final quality control before this stream goes to the compost pile. The lighter material makes its way to the polishing screens, where spinning discs send all fibers, such as paper, cardboard, and newsprint, over the top, while all bottles and other remaining recyclables fall back to continue through the process. Next are the 4 optical sorters. The optical sorters have sensors that tell the equipment which material it needs to send over. With a shot of air, the plastic is ejected over while the rest of the material falls and continues through the process. While plastics and paper are being identified, aluminum is also sorted. The eddy current separator has a strong magnetic belt. This causes non-ferrous metals to go flying over and separated into its own stream, which ends in a bunker. As material nears the end of its journey, it arrives at the 4 Max AI units. The Max AIs are programmed to identify specific material types and extract anything that does not belong in the stream. These items then fall into bunkers separated by commodity. Once the process is over, recyclables are baled and sold to be recycled.
So hopefully that video helps to illustrate what happens to the material stream when it goes to a high diversion MRF and goes through all those processes. It's pretty impressive to see. We've been to a few tours, and it's just amazing what the machinery can do. So Jilton Solid Waste has taken a more thoughtful, strategic approach to find a long-term sustainable solution to SB 1383. While we do strongly support educating our customers and promoting proper waste separation and recycling, doing this alone has proven not to be enough to ensure that the waste is adequately separated for diversion and repurposing. The long-term solution is to have our waste materials separated in a mechanical way. Therefore, we are proposing to build a high diversion material recovery facility and composting facility at our McClure Road property. Having these facilities will allow the jurisdictions we serve to comply with SB 1383 mandates. Our McClure Road property is permitted for us to build a high diversion MRF. Our transfer station at McClure has been in place for 30 years. We need to invest in newer equipment than we currently have to process the tonnages going forward. We are performing our own waste characteristic studies to help us determine what material for sorting and processing materials that we will need. But the bottom line is the organic material has to be clean. The state of California requires a 1% contamination level before materials can be placed in a windrow at a composting facility. And the new technology that we are planning to invest in will help us achieve this level. So composting is a critical component in the management of organics. At our McClure Road site, our current permit allows us to compost 470 tons a day or 122,000 tons per year, which is much more than all of our cities would be able to produce now and into the future. We are one of only 35 compost facilities in the state that can accept food. So we have the space and the capacity for a composting facility, and our investment in the new Gore composting technology satisfies the California Air and Water Boards, which will allow us to run and manage our composting facility effectively and efficiently. So in conclusion, Jilton Solid Waste believes the most cost-effective approach is the 2-cart system that we currently have, along with investing into becoming a high diversion material recovery facility. To clean up our materials rather than invest into purchasing more trucks and more carts. A high diversion MRF gives us more flexibility to take care of both our commercial and our residential customers, as these processes are capable of pulling off the organic materials along with the recyclables, with any materials being further processed and diverted from the landfill. Our new composting facility gives you the assurance that you have the capacity for your waste materials going forward. So both of these solutions taken together ensure that the highest amount of material is clean, diverted, and repurposed. So with that, we would like to open it up for any questions that you might have for us.
Council members, anyone have a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious, the HE MRF in the Bay Area, that the MRFs that currently exist, what percentage are they capable of? I mean, I assume it's at least 75.
It is.
Where are they typically at that you see? And actually, where are you looking at for yours as well, the percentage?
Right, so I can double check on this, but I believe that they're more in like the 80-90%
Oh, wow.
with their MRF, and you
Okay.
can really see that it's really effective. And then for us, we're looking to phase in our MRF. You know, phase one, we'd have, you know, the mandate is requiring a high diversion material recovery facility to be able to divert 50% at the year 2022. We're almost at that now. We're not quite there, but we've done some characteristic studies and we're almost there now. But then beginning in the summer of 2023, start investing in that second phase with our high diversion MRF. And then by third quarter of 2024, be ready to go and start, you know, operating as a a high diversion MRF. So then, you know, well in advance or a little bit of advance of the
Sure.
2025 requirement.
So knowing that you're on
75.
that timetable and knowing that we're looking at 24, we're going to start enforcing, or the state's going to start enforcing noncompliance. Who do they enforce that noncompliance to, you or the municipalities?
The jurisdictions, they look to the jurisdictions to make sure that you're ensuring that your waste is being transferred to a high diversion MRF.
And you mean by jurisdiction, the
The
municipalities?
cities, yeah, it falls on the cities.
So hopefully, I mean, you guys will be up to speed with that, or we're going to get yelled at.
Exactly.
Okay,
That's
fair
one
enough.
way to look at it, exactly.
Fair enough, fair enough.
That's well said.
Any other council members have questions?
Yeah, you're obviously not the only company out there looking to put the MRFs out there. Is there more than one source for this equipment that you're looking to purchase? And if so, how many other garbage entities are looking to obviously implement the same thing to meet the requirements?
Right, so our team of 12 at Jilton has been meeting since December we meet weekly. Part of those meetings have been conversing with lots of vendors that are, you know, producing, you know, a lot of the equipment that you saw in the video where we've had demonstrations and presentations, and so we are looking, you know, to make sure that we get the equipment that we need to get the diversion that we need, excuse me, but also economically. So we're staying within, and I know Richard would probably like to speak to that as well, but.
With your timeline, you're looking at third quarter of 24, and with 25 potential enforcement, with other entities doing the same thing, are you pushing that deadline a bit close for enforcement action in 25, considering there's others that are going to be purchasing the same equipment? Where are you falling on the priority list, if you will, of these vendors to ensure that you're going to get that equipment in time?
Exactly. Good, great question. So a lot of them are telling us that they're a year out, and some of them are, because we're going to phase it in, and so we can actually be ready in the third quarter of this year. Once we move forward and make a decision with one of our vendors, we could be ready, and that way by 2022, we'll be at that 50% level. And then, you know, and then from there, we'll have the equipment. They've assured us that they can get us the equipment, because to your point, a lot of people are going to be in line to buy that equipment.
Right.
And so that's why we've, you know, been in pretty good negotiations with vendors to make it happen for us. And they're assuring us that they can deliver.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is, to bounce off your question, I know that, like, from what I understand, the League of California Cities has been, you know, talking to the state about, hey, let's tap the brakes on it. You know, you guys spent so much time developing the regulations on this one, and now that they're developed, okay, the time that's left, everybody has to scramble.
Right.
What have you heard about them being successful to loosen this time frame?
Well, what we're hearing, and we have been in conversations with Cal Recycle. In fact, we're having a meeting with them on Wednesday again to talk about what actually is required, because we've seen some changes. They put some things out and then they've changed it. So we're seeking clarity. But what we've been told when we've reached out to them is, you know, as they've got to see that you're moving forward. They've got to see that you've got a plan in place and that you're not just sitting on your laurels and kind of thinking it's, you know, oh, this is going to go away. They've got to see some significant steps forward, that you are in negotiations, that you are planning, that you're permitted. The great thing about Jilton is we're currently permitted. We're permitted to build a MRF, and we're already permitted to have a composting facility, and that's not the case in a lot of areas. And needing those permits could take, you know, 5 to 7 years. So we're already way up the curve on that. But even if we just feel like we need to keep moving forward because we feel like it's not going to go away. You know, the state of California, the overall goal is, you know, emissions reduction and, you know, climate change and climate control is what we're being told. And, you know, we're not the rule makers, but we just have to get it implemented. So, you know, really looking to move forward, you know, and not just, if we get a little bit of grace period, then great, but we're going to keep moving forward.
Councilmembers, anyone else like to ask any questions?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So are you looking for jurisdictions to partner with you to build the MRF, or you're gonna build the MRF and then pass the costs on to the jurisdictions and we're just paying for a service?
Well, we're looking, yeah, before we move forward, that's why, you know, we're kind of doing this in phases. And, you know, this is, we've got a lot of new council members. This is our educational phase, if you will, to introduce you to what it is and what we're doing and what we think the best solution would be based on the research that we've done. And yes, we are, you know, it will require us to renegotiate our contracts. And, you know, we come to these meetings, you know, we've been to a lot of staff meetings, and we're in the council phase now. And, you know, everyone wants a rate. It's all about, what's it gonna cost my constituents? I've got to answer to them. They've put me in this office. What's it gonna, you know, I can't go raising the rates to an enormous amount, and we understand that. And that's why I'm not at this podium telling you what your rate is. Right. Because we're being very, like I said, we've been meeting since December. We meet every week. We're looking at rate studies that are going on in the state, rate studies that are being done in the Bay Area that I mentioned, to make sure that once we do come back to you with a rate that will be passed on to our constituents, that we've done our due diligence and we're giving you the best rate that we can give you, and I know, you know, the lowest rate.
Because I'm looking at this, so we made an investment years ago in South San Joaquin Irrigation District in their water treatment plant. Is that what you envision, or is it still selling a service? That's, I'm trying to make the distinction. Are we gonna continue to have the same type of relationship with you? Every once in a while, we'll go out to bid, or we'll talk about increases. Right. Or is it gonna be, hey, you need a certain amount to invest to help you complete the MRF, and then we're buying into the MRF so that we have some security that we're gonna be able to have that service for the future and meet our goals that California set for us.
Right. I believe hopefully our relationship will strengthen going forward, but it will continue to be, you know, a contract, whether it be evergreen or whether it be a 10-year contract. I mean, you do have the opportunity to go out to bid. We hope that's not what you do. Right. And we're trying to provide you a solution so you have the assurance of knowing you have a place to not only get your compost, but a place. So when you do your reporting, we're going to have the reporting. We're going to be able to give you through this technology all the numbers that you need to report to Cal Recycle, and to be able to demonstrate that you are in fact meeting, you know, it's really a collective state goal. If we get, you know, it's not, you know, they're not going to look at the city of Escalon and say, are you meeting 75%? But we do have to, I mean, I can't speak for them, but they are going to want to see an increase in what we're diverting. And so I believe it's a partnership. I mean, Richard can speak if it's differently, but it's a partnership going forward with just, you know, a longer term contract, because part of why we're doing this is a big investment for Jilton, but we feel like it's the right thing to do to adequately service the areas that we do service and to help you meet your mandates. All right. Because at the end of the day, we're the hauler.
Right.
But we want to do our part.
So, and then the last question is, what would the purpose be of continuing with a 2-can or 2-cart system versus just one, if it's going to the?
Oh, that's a good question. Why wouldn't we maybe go back to one? You know, maybe Richard can speak to that, where we're currently in 2, and we currently have the one-pass truck that, you know, we can pick 2 as if we're picking 1, but.
More than likely, because of the amount of material that each household produces, you're going to be 2 cans if they were black, if the one was green and one was black. So the system that we have, I mean, if you've been around for a while, you know that we've changed how we've collected over the years, because a lot of the things that was displayed up here earlier kind of made us change those things. And this one here is just quite a bit bigger than all of them put together of a change. And like Tracy was saying, we want to come and educate and start there, because it's a lot to wrap our heads around. It took us a while, and we were just given this bill just passed in November of '20. So, you know, we're all sitting here wearing masks and social distancing, and we've been through all that. It's been very hard to communicate. And so we thought we got to get on in some way, get out there and do something, and get it educated. And you know, I have to compliment your staff. They've come right along and have been educating themselves. And it's been very, very difficult for all the cities that we serve, or you know, the size of Escalon or a little bit bigger. It's been tough. And your questions that you've asked tonight are no different than any other council has been asking. So you're not out of line.
We appreciate the education, so we know what's coming, but we are comfortable with the unfunded mandates. You know, we recognize that's just the way the state operates. So, you know, we appreciate you bringing it to our attention and let us know what's coming down the pipe.
Yeah, and the question, I mean, of price, as always, we've always looked at what can the consumer, you know, we look at, we're the consumer too. We're out there and we're not looking to gouge anybody, and hopefully that's why we're still here in Escalon, because we haven't had that approach. And we're looking at this going, there's a lot there, and as we've waded through the water, we've found, hey, there's other ways to make this thing happen, and those things can save us all money. And if it's going to save us money, it's going to save you folks money. And that's, you know, and in the meantime, we make the people up north in that building up there happy, because that's what this is all about.
Is there any other questions, council?
One
How
last
about out in the audience? Do we have any questions here that we want to entertain?
I got a quick one. You said we have similar questions to everybody else out there in other councils. What question did we not ask that's been asked in other councils that we're missing?
What question was not asked?
If we would, you know, be servicing just our jurisdictions, or if we would be approached by other, you know,
Yeah.
because in the area, there's not a lot of high diversion MRFs in the area, and if, you know, and I don't want to speak for Richard.
Yeah, there was a few cities that was concerned that we would be pushing them back and not taking care of them. We said, hey, we're going to take care of the customers that we are presently collecting from right now. And like Tracy, you know, I don't know why, the way it worked out, we were able to hang on to the composting permits. Our transfer facility, we have some sorting belts there, but nothing to the magnitude of what we're going to need. And our footprint of area that's considered permitted under the state of California is, the footprint's big enough, and we can basically build a little over 100,000 square foot building if we needed to, and I don't think we're going to need to do that because it's all going to have to be covered. But we're looking at building it in phases, but the goal is to meet the mandates. And I'm sure before we get this mandate done, there'll be another one.
Well, I can guarantee that. Does anyone in the audience have a quick, go ahead, Dave, you have a question for Mr. Jilton?
I was noticing on that facility in San Jose, it had the composting. Do you sell that compost for a purpose, or what do you do with it?
Yeah, yes, the question was, do we sell the compost, what do we do with it? Yes, it's material being made to go on farmland or landscaping material.
Okay, and the next one, it also is nicely separated glass, aluminum, and tin. Do you take that and get a few bucks when you take it into a recycler, or do you guys have to eat that cost?
Well, right now, that the recycling markets are very, very terrible. They're not very good. The embargoes that we've had with China, a little short story. Even though we think that the Bay Area are the green people, and I'm not saying anything bad from anybody from the Bay Area, I've lived in this area all my life, but they have been taking their trash over to China and calling it recyclables and making everybody smile. And it's floated back over the Pacific Ocean onto our shores because they were throwing it back into the ocean. So basically, long story short, they started putting mandates on how good a quality of material can go over there. And we used to have, in California, 14 paper mill recycling processing facilities that made cardboard in California. We have 2 now. And so getting recyclables into that has been a problem. So that's why we've even went to the point where a lot of your, if you start going through people's trash like we get to, Amazon boxes are the biggest thing in somebody's trash can. Yep. That's compostable material because it's grade 3 cardboard, and you have to have grade 1 cardboard basically to get into China right now. Long story.
I'm just curious, I took a course on plants and stuff. The teacher was saying that the regular cardboard, plain nothing on it, she says to cut it up, put it in your compost because the worms love it. It's like, because they eat the cardboard, but yeah.
Cardboard's made from wood.
Yeah.
So it's no different, it's a tree.
All right, so if there's no other questions, do we go to online too, on the phones? Do we have to ask people on the phones too?
I see only staff on the phones.
Okay, so there's no reason to ask. All right, well, Mr. Jilton, thank you for your time.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, where are we? We are on the consent calendar, are we not?
Yes.
All right, let's go there. These items are considered routine in nature and are acted upon a single action unless requested by an individual council member or member of the public for special consideration. I will accept a, it'll come to me. Motion, there we go.
Move to accept.
There. All right, we have a motion.
Second.
Motion second, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, very good. All right, so let's see here. That moves us down to matters presented from the audience.
Staff communications.
Did I miss that? Where did I miss that at? Let's see. Oh, right there, I got it. Okay, go ahead.
So included in your council agenda tonight were staff communications from the departments for March. The treasurer's report, police department, animal control, recreation, development services, building department, public works, water department, wastewater, and the project report for March. Staff is available to answer any questions that you might have on those.
Are there any questions, gentlemen?
Okay, so if there's no questions, I have a few other items. So I had been contacted and from a resident with concern about the Paddock Mobile Manor residents not being able to get their vaccinations. So I was able to coordinate with the county a vaccination day and with the bus system to get rides from Paddock Manor to the community center. And we did that today. Unfortunately, when the county reached out to Paddock Manor, they weren't interested in letting them do the vaccinations at the site. So we made other arrangements for the community center. We tried to have some volunteers go out and pass out flyers, and the current management on the park shooed them away and said they weren't welcome. And therefore today, we were only able to vaccinate 3 people, none of which were from Paddock Manor. So I know that word got to some of the folks in the park. I just don't know if a few of them had indicated they had already gotten their vaccination, so I hope that. But if anybody knows of somebody that hasn't gotten theirs and are interested, please have them call City Hall, and we'll see what we can do to work that out. because the bus system does offer rides to Stockton for free for vaccinations. So there is a method that they can get to a vaccination outside of the city too, if needed. So if we need to help with that, we can. And then I wanted just to update on the project report. The Yosemite Avenue sidewalk project was completed, or just completed. And I haven't had a chance myself to go look at it, but I heard that they did a great job on that. And that was completing the sidewalk near Dent. So it was finishing off. It was some Measure K funds that we had got allotted for the project. The Dinosaur Park replacement slide. So Justin, our public works superintendent, was able to find a vendor that can actually get some parts for the park. So the one replacement slide would be $2,900. So it's something that we can look at putting in for the budget for this coming year. But he was able to find some that they have some replacement parts, so that was good. We reached out. In fact, our attorney gave us some contacts, and we did reach out to Manteca and Tracy, but they didn't have any parts that we could use for that particular side. An update on the backstop that we had installed in Swanson Park. The backstop was removed, and we made a choice at staff to take the backstop and install it at Hogan Park and replace one of our older backstops. And then we will take the older backstop and make a portable backstop out of that. It's a smaller backstop, so along the lines of what the council was directing. The cost to us is going to be an extra $1,600, which was the well, I don't know what the cost is to make it portable at this point. I'm sure Public Works is going to be working on that. So, but the $1,600 was the man hours that it took to install it at Swanson. And at this point, I'm not sure that we'll have the portable completed before the season is over, especially since it is such a short season, but we will do that. Staff was questioning whether it should go back to Swanson or if we should consider another park. We didn't have to relocate any of the T-ball games into other parks. We were able to organize it all at Hogan Park on one field. I had thought that maybe we would want to do Tracy Lane, which is not too far from Hogan Park. If we ever had to do those extra games, it may be more viable there. So once we get that complete, I may be asking for some input from the council if we should put it back in Swanson. I know that there's been several, I've saw some comments, and we've had some questions about why it was removed and the desire that it was used a lot. So few of the comments that were made at the last meeting were the park is narrow and those concerns. So moving it the 50 feet doesn't change the narrowness of the park. So there's still, something I guess that we'll have to consider once we get that portable one going. At our April 5th meeting, we also had the Chamber Nation that came, or the workshop that came and did a presentation, and staff was asked to try and get some more feedback from businesses. So I did send out emails to all the businesses that we have emails on file for. I also did a Facebook post, and I've received 4 to 5 emails supporting the program. And so I had additional conversations today with the the gentleman that gave the presentation, Richard Scully. And what they did with other chambers is they understand that businesses don't necessarily reach out right away. they're not, you know, they're busy, they're running their businesses. So what they initially typically do is take the file of information of the businesses that whatever organization they're working with, whether it's a chamber or the city, and they would create all of those businesses and then let them start seeing those benefits. So for us, that means we have approximately 105 home-based businesses and 226 commercial businesses within town. Well, that's 331 businesses. So if we were to say, okay, go ahead and create websites and a mobile app, with the first initial build out and the first annual year fee, that's about $18,000. So of course, there's concern about whether these businesses are going to buy into this or not, whether it's going to be utilized, if we're going to pay for it. So the other option that they ran by me today was that Chamber Nation would take the businesses that we have information on, and they would send out a targeted email to those businesses and letting them know that the city's interested in investing in the first 100 businesses with an economic tool for business advertising and marketing, and then asking them to do a survey, are you interested, yes or no, and them try to get the first 100 businesses that the city could sponsor to get the program up and running. So I don't know if that council is interested in us moving forward with that. I have emailed the chamber, but I still haven't gotten any response from them at this point.
Tammy, where would the funding come from to initially get us involved?
So, with some of this recovery money that we're getting from the federal government, this could be an economic stimulator that we can put back into the community. So that's where my thought process is that money would
Makes
come
sense.
from.
All
I have a
right.
comment on that. So the Chamber Nation is reaching out to us to essentially help them get something going in town, right? To advertise local businesses.
To help our local businesses advertise themselves.
I think that it is a bad idea. I have 2 local businesses in town. I've done many advertising campaigns, whether it's direct mailers or it's signage. And I can tell you that for the city of Escalon, for a retail business, and you said there's 200 or so commercial businesses in town, which most people know about. The town is small enough, everybody knows what businesses are in town. They frequent them or they don't. They have one that they go to or they don't. I think that this would be a waste of our time and our money. And if it was up to me, I would shut the door on Chamber Nation.
So the unique avenue of this is that it gives you the ability to put out there that consumers that may be passing through your city could text this number. It takes you to a homepage, a marketplace for City of Escalon. They look for what services they want. One of the businesses that responded said that they have customers that come to their business from out of town, and they're always asking for places to eat. So they saw it in an advantage in that fashion.
I understand that.
Okay.
I think my think would be there's already websites out there that advertise local businesses. You can go to Yelp. You can go to, I have a food business in town. People that want to travel through Escalon on 120 where they're going to Yosemite, they're going to stop at Hula's because they can find it online quickly and easily. It's convenient for them. I don't want to spend any money of the city's money on this project. I think it is a huge waste of time and money.
Okay.
Is there anyone else?
Yeah, I'm just curious, how much would it cost Chamber Nation to send out those 100 emails?
Well, that's no cost to us. They were willing to do that legwork.
I mean, I would suggest that might be a good option as a last-ditch approach. You might be able to get your answer based on the responses, or to go along with Councilmember Crumick, your lack of responses might give you your answer. So, but that might be, if you want to do a last-ditch notion like that, it's not going to cost us anything.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Okay, where's that leave us?
So is the council interested in allowing Chamber Nation to try and do their own reach out? and
I
Target
don't have any
Reach.
opposition to that. How about anyone else?
I have no problem with it. It's not costing us any money.
Right.
Do it to try and facilitate the deal. They're more
Okay.
welcome to try.
As long as it doesn't cost any money, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I think you have a consensus.
All right. So, a couple more items. I was contacted by the farmer that holds the orchard lease for our two properties, the one on Escalon Balota and the one on St. John. And his contract is up at the end of the year for both properties. And he is only interested in continuing if he's able to replant. So in essence, that means that he
Long-term.
wants a long-term lease, 25 years minimum, and then maybe some buyout options in there. Unless the city was interested in fronting the money to put the orchard in at $6,000 an acre, then you wouldn't have to do the long-term lease.
We're not gonna do that.
So, over the next few months, we need to make a decision what we're gonna do with those properties.
We need to brainstorm something.
So I don't know if we want to, sell the 7 acres. I mean, obviously, we have dedicated the one on Escalon below to Escalon Avenue for the parkland. But
Why don't we take some time, like you suggested, and
Okay.
give it some review, and maybe we can do some brainstorming and come up with something that we can do. There's options to sell, there's options to lease. Maybe we could advertise and see if anyone's interested in some other idea we didn't think about. But I don't think we
yeah.
have to do it overnight.
Obviously, I've spoken on this before. I don't think the city of Escalon should be in the business of farming. I don't think we should own land, own trees. That's not what our job is. Currently, it brings in no money for the city. I'm pretty sure it's costing us money in property tax because the trees are sold. They don't produce anything. I think this farmer is doing the right thing. He either wants to take all the trees out, replant them, and get a nice 25-year contract. I've talked to multiple people. I think we all know that land that we own on Escalon Avenue between the golf course and the community center is an amazing piece of property that we could do some cool things with if we had the creativity and we wanted to do that. Senior housing, for one. But another thing, I had a farmer specifically tell me that, if we had 18 acres like that, that's worth upwards of $1 million that the city, if we want to unload it, we're not going to do anything with it. We could take that money, we can do some other good things with it that benefit the community. So I know we want to take time and talk about this. We've done it before. I am not in favor of a long-term lease.
Okay, anyone else?
The 7 acres on St. John, that is not part of city limits, correct?
correct.
So I wish I could say I didn't see this coming. I kind of sort of saw this coming, the way that we've been discussing it, going around and around and around and around in circles the last few years. And I would say, well, consider that lease. If it weren't for a great idea, and I think you had mentioned it, about the possibility of using some of that for a senior facility. So my worst case, so I'm thinking right now, what's our worst case scenario? We don't want to just abandon the place in the meantime. I mean, we would probably want to rip the orchard out, and now we're looking at the scenario, well, we're the ones kind of sort of like taking care of either the orchard or getting it ripped out. That probably ought to be a factor in this decision too.
Correct.
How much is it going to cost us to either maintain it, which is not worth maintaining? How much is it going to cost us to take it out, keep it bare land for now? So I think that ought to be a couple of things we ought to think about too as we go forward. That's probably a likely scenario.
I did actually ask the farmer about if we were to do a carve-out for the senior program, or senior housing, excuse me, and he said around 15 acres would be okay. He has a neighboring property that he farms, so it's not too hard.
You can still pencil it.
He could still pencil that if we cut it back some.
Okay.
So,
we're talking about the McHenry, that's.
Escalon Avenue, yeah,
policies.
Escalon, yeah.
We have what, 7-something acres on the other place? How many acres?
It's approximately, I think it's shy of 7 acres on St. John.
Good enough.
What's the crunch time on that? Like, when is that going to become a critical decision that we have to decide?
So if we were to allow him to do a long-term implant, I think that within the next 2 to 3 months, we would need to let him know because he has to order those trees ahead of time.
What if we're not going to do that?
If we're not gonna do that, then we have till December 31st.
Because that's when our lease is up.
That's when the lease is
So we
up.
just gotta keep dealing with the trees until that point.
Correct. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
How many acres does Mr. DeRusi have there across the street between the church and the community center there?
I'm not sure how many, I wanna say that I've heard like it's 40+ acres, but I'm not positive.
Just thinking if he's willing to carve out and potentially do some land swaps for the 7 acres so we can get close to the community center to have another
I don't think you
piece of
do.
dirt available to maybe senior centers in that area right across the street
I
from it.
think the argument he'd have, I think, is that he doesn't want to spread his properties out.
I don't know enough about his farming operation to know
Yeah.
that. That's one of my main concerns as well.
Yeah. All right, is there any more discussion? If not, let's go, what's next?
What's next is, back in December, I had came to the council, regarding some Prop 68 monies that we got for the park and a potential project of replacing the Hogan restroom, Hogan Park restroom. And so on Friday, the Public Works Superintendent and I went out to Tracy and visited their bathrooms that are similar to what we are looking at. And darn it, it's not gonna let me just go through those. So the bathrooms are, they come as a prefabbed, did you see something?
Saw an arrow pop up, and this one might let you.
Oh, okay, there it goes. Let's see, can I make it bigger? It doesn't like it when I make it big. So the bathrooms come as they're a prefabbed building. So this happens to be the snack bar. This is one of the restrooms. This is considered their all-gender restroom. Has the changing table with the air dryers. And then in between the men's and the women's bathroom, this is the utility room where all your plumbing and everything is. Your soap dispensers all go in here. You have access. If you had pipe issues down below there, you can see the grates there. They're manufactured to try and minimize the damages, vandalism to them. And this is one of the stalls in one of the bathrooms. They're a park bathroom. They're not truly fancy. They have these skylights in them, so that's all natural sunlight. That's no light in that right there. But it does have a light that comes on at night. And here is the men's and the women's, and you can see this line right here is the division of the two units. So they all come in as one. Or they come all together as you see them here.
Tammy, we talked about this. I went and looked at it. The question I have, and I wasn't clear with you, or I didn't think I got a good answer on this, but this unit comes with a cement floor already in place?
Correct. That is
So
our understanding.
How does that happen?
Well, I mean, it's just like a modular home. There's a floor in place, and they
The 3.5-inch
transport it.
concrete floor is already poured and it just fits right in.
Yeah.
So will they saw cut the existing situation? They were gonna have to saw cut the
So
existing.
we would have to prep the base for
So
it.
we have to prep the base for it and then they install it.
Correct.
And how much does this cost?
So, for similar size to what we have out there now, so this was the original proposed design, and this was 200.
27,000.
Yeah, 228 basically. So, whoops, yeah,
That's an installed price, or that's just for the unit?
that is the installed price, but that is the wrong picture. This is the bigger picture.
Ours is smaller?
Yeah, the one that's the 228, sorry about that, has one less urinal and one less stall in the men's bathroom and one less stall in the women's and no storage. And then, well, that's the picture that I showed you, the larger bathroom design is 280. Sorry, went the wrong
So which
way.
one are we interested in?
Well, I mean, that would be up to the council. What we have in funding is like 228,000. And so it would be, I mean, this gives us another storage area out there. It gives you the extra urinals and stalls.
What's the funding source?
So, we have the monies from the grant, which is it's about 183,000, plus the city is required to do a match of 45, almost 46,000. So the additional monies would, come from your Parks and Recreation funds.
That brings it to 229.
Yeah,
So we have a grant for 160-something thousand from the
182,000,
from the state?
yes.
And that's
Well,
some-
it's actually from, yes, it is, from the California Department of Parks.
And that's specifically for park.
Yeah, so this was monies that was allocated to all the,
What if we don't do it? Do we lose that money?
yeah, then we just
So
have
we
to.
have 160 or 180,000 sitting on the table right now to do something with.
Correct.
And that's gonna get us 75, 80% of the way to a new bathroom at the community center.
Correct.
It's a very nice facility.
So you're talking about basically we can get the smaller set of bathrooms, which isn't really that small, for about, it's gonna be 45 grand, roughly 45, 46, right?
So
I mean, I just-
we are required to match 20% of the project based on what our grant money is. That means we are, at minimum, we have to contribute the 46,000 if we use all the monies.
46,000. If we go nuts on the bigger one, then we're talking about contributing 100,000.
Probably, yeah,
Okay, and that's
maybe a
yeah.
little
You
above.
said 20%?
Correct.
Well, 20% of it, 183,000 is how much?
The 46. Well, it's
That's
20%.
Project, not the grant.
Yeah, it's the project. You have to, so if you took the total project of the 228, 20% of that is the
That
45.
makes sense, all right.
And that's already, this is a dumb question, but that's already accounted for like prevailing wage, and that's the cost of the,
That's the
So
problem.
that's the thing, the buildings come prefab.
there's no chance this could spike on us and go anywhere.
The only thing that's not considered in that is what it's gonna take us to prep
Is there
to
any?
demolish the current bathroom
Right.
and to do the foundation site, whatever we need
Is
to
there
do.
any cost on that yet?
There- Not yet, no.
We're gonna do that in-house, right?
We'll evaluate that if that's what we can do.
Have you talked to Justin about it?
Yes,
What's he
yes.
say?
Justin's actually on the phone.
Let's have him talk about it. Let's talk to
So I
Justin.
know that, go ahead, Justin.
If I could just remember that we're in staff if I could just remind the council, we're in staff communications, so there's not to be significant discussions.
Would like a little more background. Can we get that? I mean, the background from him is gonna make a significant difference in this conversation.
If it's just background in order
That's all we're
to
asking.
provide staff guidance, that's fine.
Thank you.
Just as a reminder.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mayor.
So Justin, they're asking about Public Works potentially preparing the site or demolishing the existing bathroom.
Well, like the attorney says, we don't need a lot of information. What we wanna know is, do you think we can do it in-house?
Yeah, I definitely think it's something we could probably do in-house. If we had to go out, I think it would be minimal.
Okay, that's good enough. I don't wanna get carried away with it, but that's what we're looking for. Thank you.
And if we get like a consensus to move forward, is that what's you're kind of?
Yeah, so we have to present our project back to the state by the end of June. So we have to know what we're gonna move forward with. So if the council is comfortable with moving forward with one of these bathrooms, then I would like to present the bathroom to the state as our project.
Okay, so do we need a vote on this?
Just consensus is fine.
Let me ask you this, how do we decide which one we're gonna get? Is that something we should discuss now?
Well, I will bring the project, I guess I'll have to bring it back on the next agenda.
So what you're looking for now is just the general conception that we're gonna do it?
Yes,
Okay, is there a consensus, gentlemen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, there it is.
okay. My last item is, we had at our last meeting talked about potential water sales, a water infrastructure sales tax, and I did send out a draft survey letter today and looking for feedback from council if you guys have any
I have
comments
some
on that.
questions I wanna ask you about that.
Sure.
The question I have to ask you about, when you sent out the survey, I don't think I remember looking at it yet, but, in the survey, did you explain the distributing of funds that would be collected, how they would be distributed? She did. She did. Okay, I didn't get a chance to look it over that much. Here, want to pass this down, please? I need one, you got one more?
Tammy, you have one more? Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so my concern is that if we're gonna ask them to pony up some money in taxes, we're gonna have to explain to them how this money comes back to them in a beneficial way. And it's not a lifetime tax. The idea, I think, initially was a 2-year sunset. Is that in here as well?
It's being considered as only a 2-year tax increase and could only continue if voters approved.
And it's a half cent, and what would we raise in 2 years? Let's see here, annual.
Well, annually, it's the 480,000.
So 2 years, we'd have almost $1 million.
Yes.
And that $1 million would do what for us?
Well, there's a list of some of the water infrastructure plans. So the well replacement, the well generator upgrades that are needed, main replacements.
And that funding source, or funding sources for them normally would come from?
Our current rates.
Okay, and the next question I have in here, what did we do to help the seniors?
So it's proposing setting aside a fund to allow senior and disabled discount water rates.
And how much?
I didn't establish that in here.
Yeah, that would be important, because if you're.
Well, I get that's the council decision, so I can't put that in there, so.
Well, we should try to, I think the thing is, they're gonna look at this and they're gonna say, okay, that's great, but what am I getting out of it? That's just typical. I don't think it's anything special because it's this one or any other one, but people wanna know what it is they're gonna get back for what they're putting into it. So, I think this is fine, but I think one of the things would have been helpful if we told them approximately what they might.
Well, this hasn't gone out, this is only a draft, this was a starting point, so.
Okay, I thought you already sent it out. Okay, good.
Oh, no, it's only a draft.
Okay, well, I would just suggest that we find a number to tell the seniors, who are gonna all vote, most of them, what is they can expect if in fact we can get this thing to go pass. So
Okay, so we'll have to bring it to a next agenda so that we
Right.
can have that discussion
we
then.
need to figure that out. I think that's really critical. And then the other thing is critical from my perspective, and I think a lot of people share my opinion, is that it is a sunset after 2 years, and the only way it can be resurrected is with a major majority of votes. And I don't mean people that vote, I mean people that are registered to vote. Because the one thing that'll kill this is if they think there's gonna be a continual tax forever, and that's what happens to most taxes. And then I think last time we were here, we had a lady speak about the taxes, and she was in favor of them, but there was an issue she had with them. I can't remember what it was. She said something in the Bay Area.
She said in another city that she lived at, they had enacted the tax for a recreation program.
There you go.
And the recreation program thrived from that tax, but when the tax expired, then so did all the recreation program.
It's usually what happens.
And that'd be the consideration as well if we're giving senior discounts. If
True.
it sunsets and they don't renew it, the senior discounts go away.
True.
And that's all stuff that needs to be put on this flyer. So people are totally cognizant of what's gonna happen. So we don't wanna mislead them, we wanna get the full buy-in, but we want them to be totally aware of what the consequences are.
Well, if I may, if I remember correctly, the last direction was for staff to reach out to the community to start getting some input on it, which is why this is just a survey. It's not a bullet points of what a proposed tax would be. It's just the beginning of getting the public's input on it, and then I would certainly predict that there's gonna be either a workshop or at least 1 or 2 meetings where this is gonna be on the agenda, where you could then finalize or at least narrow what it is that, what your mayor is talking about.
I don't disagree with you, Mark, but I will tell you this much, you don't wanna leave out anything that might encourage them to show up to the meetings and stuff. That's why it's critical, I think, that we give them some indication of what benefits may lie for those who may get benefited from, like the seniors. Because the seniors vote. And not only do they vote, they don't wanna pay more tax unless they see a chance that something's gonna benefit them. So I agree with you that it's only a feeler or a kind of a probe out there, but I think it's important we get as much of positive stuff we can. All right, so where are we at now with this? So is this something that we need to just vote on, or?
No, well, I'll have to bring it back to the next meeting so you guys can give
Clean it
staff
up.
direction regarding what
Okay.
kind of
All right.
discount rate you would be
All right.
open to.
Good enough.
And so this is, go ahead.
Are you able to even come up with a number at this point as to what that discount rate might look like?
Well, I mean, the discount rate, I can tell you that based on our current sales tax revenues, a half cent gives you 480,000. So then council would need to make that decision, how much of that money you want to go towards a disability and senior program. And right now, currently, we have approximately 500 senior or disabled residents that receive the discounted garbage rates.
So is it better, in order to enact permanent senior discounts, wouldn't we be looking at generating money off of this sales tax revenue to take care of some of these infrastructure projects? So it doesn't have a sunset, so we could implement the senior discounts and they would be in perpetuity, and then we would be able to just, you know, take care of some of these projects that are costing, or that are creating the increase.
Well, the good thing about this initiative, or tax, whatever it is, it's not gonna be just the people of Escalon paying for it.
Right.
Anyone who drives through this town, who buys something in this town, is gonna have a contribution for us. So it won't be totally on the individuals of the community, and it's a nice feature because it does bring in that outside revenue.
No, I think it's good. I just think that you look at the projects that we have and you're talking about $480,000, you know, that could go to reduce the rates generally, but I would prefer to see a more focused approach to where we can implement senior discounts permanently. That's just part of the rate structure, that they get a different rate. I'm not sure that we can do that.
So you can do it, except for you cannot have the other ratepayers pay it. So you would have to use discretionary monies from your general fund or from a source, the sales tax, that it's specific to go fund that. But other tax or ratepayers cannot pay for them to have the discount.
So I would prefer to look long-term on that, so you don't give them a discount for a couple years and then it disappears on them, and then they're at the mercy of whatever the current rate is. So, but you know, I like the idea of looking for, you know, a broader source of income from people passing through town and people that don't necessarily live here, so you don't put the entire burden on the citizens' backs. But you know, I think we should be looking at that as to offset some of the costs of the infrastructure projects and hopefully free up money so that we can have a more permanent benefit to the seniors.
What kind of discount are you giving on the garbage to the current senior population now?
It's $2.
I was just wondering about the percentage, so it's $2, okay.
Yeah.
No, I think I agree with with Mayor Pro Tem Legero. Yeah, it's gonna be a disaster if this has a 2-year potential sunset. And I'm assuming there's a 2/3, it would take 2/3 to pass?
Correct.
Yeah, so I mean, the likelihood of it passing or failing 2 years from now, assuming that well, 4 years from now, assuming it passes in 2022, yeah, I can see that being disastrous because people get used to their budget as it is, and all of a sudden, boop, even a little bloop, you know,
right,
can really mess things up. So I would agree, I'd have a concern with the sunset clause.
Yeah, I think what has to be discussed too is this sales tax idea being proposed in order to keep, you know, the costs down for seniors, or is it being proposed in order to fund certain infrastructure projects? I think, you know, is it gonna be both? Yeah, I understand that, but we really have to pick which one it is. I am hugely against raising taxes in any way, shape, or form on anybody. And so it's gotta be clearly defined on exactly what we're doing. If it was a sales tax measure going towards infrastructure projects that are gonna ultimately benefit the future of the community, you know, practical growth for the community, that's one thing. If it's going towards simply keeping rates down for people that are struggling to pay the water bill, I don't know, because then you're taxing everybody to subsidize a certain amount of people, and that's the problem with taxation in the first place. So that's something we would need to talk about.
Yeah, and I think the way that it's written is that it would provide both, and it would help both. So it would help all ratepayers because there is a good portion of it that would be going to infrastructure, but a small portion set aside for those discount rates.
And it wouldn't.
That's the way that it's been presented in the draft, but of course, we'll bring this back to the next meeting that we can refine that.
And it would not reduce the current funding we already have either. It would be in addition to that.
Yes.
So all funding sources we have would remain the same with the addition of this if it did in fact pass. So we would have a little more to play with and get more things done.
Again, when you do one tax and the costs of everybody go up, then you gotta do another tax, then you gotta do another tax, and then you gotta do another tax in order to continue keeping those revenues going. And so, that's something that I think we need to really look at carefully.
It's a good point, because you're shifting a fee to a tax. You might get a broader base paying that tax, but, you know, if a local person goes in and buys a vehicle, you know, and it goes from 7.75% tax to 8%, you know, what is the impact on that purchase? So, but yeah, and if it is focused on infrastructure and specific projects, you know, our rates, the rate process that we use, the 218 process, it takes all of these projects into consideration and then determines the rate off of us building all of those projects. So if you have another source of funding that comes in and wipes out $500,000, you know, of increases, it does get spread out across everybody, so that everybody does see a benefit. But when you're talking specifically about seniors and, you know, giving them a break for a couple years, sure, that'd be great, but you know, we need to look at this broader and longer term. So we're gonna get the benefit of having the extra income to take care of a long-term infrastructure project, so let's look at a long-term discount project for seniors as well.
Can you tell me between now and the next meeting, maybe see if there's other communities that are doing senior and disabled discounts on water, so I can have an idea of what other people are doing? If
I
it's out
can
there at all?
try. I actually have some scheduled time off, so I'll do my best.
Okay.
Vacation? Yeah. Okay. So, let's move on to the next item.
Okay, so that's all the items I have. Do any of my other managers? Chief Lackey has something to add.
Over the weekend, I was contacted by our Citizen of the Month, who was approached by the Escalon Ministerial Society about the dangers of pulling out a paddock onto 120.
Yeah.
I went out there personally, took a look. What I found is there is a telephone pole, again, similar to David Drive, that is in the way. I'm not sure where to go with that. I'll be reaching out to the city manager how to address this any further. But that's what I found, and that's with pulling up to the limit line.
Maybe we could move the limit line like we should have, because it's the same problem at David too.
The problem I see is the limit line's already pretty close to the fog line. We used one of the police cruiser SUVs, which sticks a large bumper. And when you get out to where, just so you know, I was accompanied by Sergeant Flores. His stature leaves him to pull out a little bit farther, and he is almost in the lane of travel.
Wow.
Which I could see the concern, depending on the type of car you drive, where you sit in the car, there's a bunch of factors, but there is a telephone pole right on the corner of that sidewalk.
Yeah.
Is there room from that and in onto the property? Not that we can get anybody to move a power pole just because we ask them, but is there room to move the placement of that power pole, you believe?
No, I believe so, because that neighboring property is the storage shed merchant, and I think it's open in that corner. But again, I think we'd be reaching out to PG&E.
Yeah.
Telephone pole or PG&E pole?
It's a power pole.
Oh, okay,
It's directly in line with the one we examined on David,
right.
so it's a similar situation.
Yeah, and when we reached out to PG&E regarding the one that's at the corner of David, I want to say that was a few years ago, and they quoted us about somewhere in the $25,000 range to
Yeah, I'll
move the
bet.
pole.
Yeah. How many accidents have we had in those intersections? Either one of them?
Apparently not enough to warrant a traffic light. There's been a number right there, but nothing significant. I think in comparison, the intersection of Brennan and 120, there was a lot more accidents there. than there has been at Paddock, but
And no light.
no light.
Well, funding's everything, unfortunately.
The other items I have are just an update for council. When you read my report, you will see a number of car break-ins or burglary thefts from cars. Dispel some of the rumors I saw on social media. There was none of those vehicles except for maybe one that was locked. There were a couple stolen vehicles that were mentioned, and rumors on social media were 10 cars were stolen. To dispel that, it was 2. One of the vehicles that was taken was left unlocked with the keys in the car.
Unbelievable.
With that said, I was contacted by a concerned citizen who lives in the neighborhood that was hit pretty hard, which it does not make me happy. This is the type of crime that frustrates me beyond belief. I hate thieves. They're hard to catch, and it's hard to prove anything. But I'm also going to try to breathe life back into the Neighborhood Watch program based on this.
Good for you.
We did this a couple of times, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. We got minimal to no interest, but I'm hoping that this, in light of all this, it will renew a sense of responsibility. And last but not least, just to update you, we've had some major mechanical failures with our vehicle fleet. It's going to get expensive. Right now, if you see officers driving what you thought was a supervisor's car, there's a reason for it. I believe we're down to 3 vehicles.
All right. Okay, any questions for Chief, gentlemen?
How many cars are in your fleet?
There was 9.
We have 3 operational.
Yes, sir. We do have 2 purchased. One, police vehicles aren't manufactured and stored anywhere. It's kind of like Burger King. They don't make it till you order it. I believe the one we ordered, talked to Tammy about that when I ordered it. I think it was a couple months ago. It should be here end of May. Then it has to go get outfitted, which I'm struggling with one of our vendors for the dash cameras. It's an expensive piece of equipment. They seem to be slow to get us anything. They're really hard to work with, and that's what's holding up one of the vehicles right at the moment, which I was told, ready to go, waiting on the camera.
Chief, how are we doing with our senior patrol?
Senior patrol, meaning our volunteers?
Yes, sir.
My number 1 is here with us. We're still
question is-
actively recruiting.
How many do we have besides Dave?
What are we up to, Dave? 2, 3? 3. I just got a one going into background for a 3rd volunteer.
And what vehicle do they drive?
They drive, well, I kind of hesitate to say this, but we have Unit 311, which is older Ford Taurus that was, I think, an SSJID car. Hillier helped us out with that. Dave has taken over that. It's an older vehicle. Dave keeps the inside showroom quality, and it's still running.
What hours do our seniors normally patrol?
Dave's pretty flexible. He helps us out whenever we call him. Typically, he show up, what, Dave?
Tuesdays and Thursdays, I get there about noonish, and not 2, 3, sometimes 4.
And how long do you patrol?
Well, all depends on, sometimes I have to go off to Ripon to take stuff to DOJ or off to the courts in Manteca.
Okay.
And stuff, and then I like to at least get an hour of zipping around.
Okay, otherwise you're a courier.
Pardon?
Otherwise you're a courier?
Yeah, 72-year-old.
Okay.
And that also,
I have a question too. Okay, so if, on this last situation, you just said they got hit very hard, what type of a situation did we have?
I, at this point, can't tell you, but it was all roughly in the same neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
It was door handle shaking, in my opinion. Meaning,
Okay.
Don't know if it was a group, single person. We have monitored some individuals that have come back to town that are known to do this type of thing. Currently looking for them.
Are they locals or out-of-town people?
They were local, then out of town, then they're back again.
Okay, so they're, you know who we're dealing with.
Yeah, I kind of got an idea.
Okay.
But, a lot of times we are targeted because we are in between Stockton and Modesto.
What are the hours normally that these are happening?
Anywhere from 2 to 5 a.m.
2 to 5 a.m.
I know residents are frustrated because they bought cameras. Cameras are useful after the fact. And hopefully that when they show us the video, we recognize a car, a person. A lot of times we can't. Quality of the camera, even Ring cameras aren't that great. Again, what's frustrating for me is I see social media that somebody says at 2 a.m. they heard a car alarm or something out of the ordinary, but they never called the police. They just whatever.
At 2 p.m., at 2 a.m. in the morning, who would you call?
911. I have gone publicly. I have told everybody that has contacted me over this, if you see something you do not like, you see something you don't understand, you see something that is unfamiliar, that's what we get paid to do. Do not hesitate. I don't care what time it is.
So it's a 911 call.
Non-emergency, 838-7093, press 1. You get a dispatcher, hey, there's something strange in my neighborhood.
70 what, please?
9-3.
9-3, thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean that to come out like Ghostbusters, but,
Okay, well then, it's good to know that 838-7093 is the number to call.
Option 1,
Option 1.
Option 1, if it's
non-emergency.
non-emergency, and if it's emergency, which is a break-in, obviously, 911.
Correct.
Yeah, you see something, they're smashing windows or whatever, and you're afraid, that's 911.
Okay, good enough.
Looking at the activities log for the officers, they are active.
Oh, yeah, they're
Making arrests, they are making stops, contacting people, and, you know, they're doing an outstanding job. The state is not supporting them because all we do is go to court at arraignment and try and keep these people in custody, and you cannot do it.
Unbelievable.
And it is amazing. You have people that are out, they get arrested, they come in, they get released again, they go out, pick up another crime. They'll have multiple crimes, so they're looking for like a Costco discount when they finally get stuck in custody. So your hands are tied because you have no other support other than officers being alert, being on patrol, and going out and trying to prevent this from happening. So the idea of having more eyes, whether it's senior patrol or having the neighborhood watch programs up and about, that's absolutely necessary nowadays. The cameras, the Ring cameras, social media, you're right that a lot of times things will be going on in a neighborhood and everyone's talking about it, but they never contact the police department and say, hey, come on by and check this person out. So it's interesting to see that that's a great notification process to get people alert and say, hey, that, you know, watch out for these people or watch for this car. But there's that one additional element that they need to follow up, and that's with the police department. But you have no assistance from the law right now.
If you don't mind, I think I have responded if you want an effective police force, there has to be a certain level of partnership between us and the community. And it's a two-way street. I expect my officers to be professional and courteous, but at the same time, we need your help to let us know where it is happening, what is happening, and a lot of times it's, well, I didn't want to bother you. And I'm like, you're not bothering me if you're giving me something to do.
No, that's,
And I agree with you. Last I'll say on this is, you're in law enforcement and you know what burglary is. I have never seen it dumbed down to misdemeanor as many times as I have in the past 5 years.
we can have a whole-on conversation about how things have changed and what we can and can't do anymore. But, you know, I think the community needs to know that the criminal law doesn't necessarily take care of property crimes in particular. So if you're stealing cars or entering cars to steal, you know, laptops or bags or change in the ashtray, if they have ashtrays anymore, you know, that's the kind of stuff where you're just, you know, you're always behind the curve on that. But, you know, every once in a while, you know, you get the right call, the right people in the right neighborhood and get them.
I will, just one more thing. I hear a lot, it's Escalon. I shouldn't have to lock my doors. I hear a lot that it's Escalon. I grew up in this town. I have always left whatever in my car in the driveway. Yes, you're in Escalon. We try hard. These guys in this police department will get amazing things done with the bare minimum. I stand behind every one of these guys. Having been one from a reserve to now, I've seen it all. Times have changed. Do not leave laptops on dashboards and your car unlocked. It will not be there the next morning. I apologize for that. I can't, that is kind of way out of your police department's control. We need your help. So don't set yourself up for failure, and some simple things. And when I talked to Ann over the weekend, and by the way, since you're here, the 19th is on, we're perfect, we're good to go. I am going to address a few of these things with the senior. We agreed to meet at the seniors meeting on the 19th.
Good for you.
2 p.m., correct? Okay, I wrote it down right.
Excellent.
That's all I
Alright.
have.
Any other questions for the chief?
Keep up the good work.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
You're great. Okay, so now I think we move on to number 4, is that correct?
Yes.
Update from Commission on Aging.
Well, it wasn't part of my report, but I want to tell you how troubled I am about this Paddock Park issue. Because that's seniors living in there, and they should have been, that information should have been made available to them. And I'm wondering, can we pursue that a little bit further to see if it's just a manager making an irresponsible decision, or is there an owner, someone else that we could go to develop a friendship? So when something like this comes up, I understand it's private property. I understand they have the right to no solicitation, but I don't understand why they would want to not let their seniors get information about the vaccine.
So the comment was made to the county when they reached out to the manager that the park is in transition to a new owner. You need to wait until the new owners come.
New management company's taking over, right?
New owners.
Oh, new owner. I thought it was a
Yes.
management company, okay.
They did have new management.
So.
Yeah,
you-
they
you
did
can
have
address
new
it-
management, but it has
a new
sold.
owner as well, so they could deal with that situation probably.
Yeah, so I think it has a lot to do with the transition.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, they have a bulletin board, I assume, correct?
I don't know.
And do they have a area where you can post notices and stuff?
I don't know, but I still think that it's worth a visit over there to see if we can develop some friendship with them. So I will work on that and
Great
see
idea.
if we can do something to have them work with us as well. The senior program is going very well. We had some drive-up events so that people did not have to get out of their cars. But this month, now we are going to have them get out of their cars and be at the picnic tables behind the community center and start building the activity back up again so that they're together, because we think it's real important now for people to start getting out of their homes and start connecting with each other again. And that's why in May, we've asked the chief of police to come and introduce himself, to also give some safety or some safety hints for them as well. And we welcome any of you that want to come at some point in time and speak to the seniors. They love it. They love to hear from you. So you are welcome to come. Just talk to me and we'll get you scheduled at some point in time. We also started our senior steppers program to get people active and walking. Peggy is here. She's one of the leaders. Gary Thomaser is also an active leader. We've had a good turnout, and I walked with them today. I'm always at the back of the line, but I walked with the group, and they are really enjoying being together. And again, it's just another attempt to get them out and get them active, and that's working quite well.
Where are your meetings at, Ann?
Right now, it's at, is it Stratford Park?
Brentwood Park at the corner of Justin and Mission is our starting point.
For the walk group.
That's for the walk, but what are you, I'm referring to the meetings you're holding?
At the picnic area at Hogan Park, in the
Yes.
Is it,
covered barbecue area.
Is it like the third Tuesday or first Monday or anything like
The
that?
third Wednesday of each month.
It's a Monday and a Friday, and now it's at 11 o'clock.
That's the walking.
That's the walking.
Okay,
Now, the action,
when's the meetings?
the third Wednesday of the month
Okay, third
at
Wednesday.
2 o'clock, so that's this Wednesday at 2 o'clock.
Yeah, that's a tough time. When,
And we're hoping that around June that we can start getting back into the community center, but we certainly will want to wait till it's safe, so we'll.
right.
The other thing that, as you know, we do everything we can to support seniors, and I had the opportunity to talk to Orlando's Market, who is moving, who has purchased Big Boys, and my purpose in talking to them was, one, I was curious as to when we would have a market there. But secondly, and most importantly, I wanted to know, since they were going to have a deli, if there was any way they could have some, not all, but some healthy food options, and possibly some senior meals. So I contacted them, and they were very, very receptive, and they kind of told me all about the store and so forth. And they've asked me to put together some suggestions, of which I will do, and Mayor Alves, I'll send you a copy as well.
Thank you.
Of what the seniors are recommending that they would like to see when they go to the deli.
Could you also send one to the manager, please? City manager? Send her a copy as well.
Okay, sure. And it's just suggested items that we think that, or that seniors are saying that they would like to see in a deli. And our whole purpose is just to have some healthier food available.
It'd be nice to have another store. It's gonna be nice to have another store.
Yes, it is, and they are very, very nice, so I'm
Any
hoping.
timeline? Did they give you a timeline?
Yes, they did, actually. They said that within 2 months, they were just about ready to go to the city for approval, and then they would go to the county. They said the
Health
county
department.
always takes longer, so about 2 months, and then once they got that final approval, it would be 6 months. So they're hoping by the end of this year to have the store and the gas station up and running.
Wow.
So I hope so. I think it will be a tremendous addition to Escalon. So we're busy. We're trying we're trying to reach out to our seniors all the time. And I should mention also that we send out, we're up to probably 125 newsletters every month now, and it started small and it just kept growing. So when it's up to 500, that's when I'll be super, super happy. But because we want to keep working till we get all the seniors involved in one way or the other. There's multiple programs that we could be doing. Our focus now is on senior housing. I want to compliment the councilman who is bringing a suggestion tonight, or recommendation tonight. You know, sometimes you have to look outside the box to do something, get something off the ground. And I'm hoping that you all will encourage him to, or that you all will agree to do that, if that will help get this program off the ground. We need senior housing, we need affordable housing. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ann, appreciate it. All right, does anyone have any questions for Ann, by the way? We kind of picked her brain, but did we have any questions for her? That doesn't look like, anybody online, Tammy?
No.
Okay, so let's move on. Annual transit update.
Yes, and John Ando is on the line to give the transit update.
Top of the evening, everybody. John Ando, Transit Coordinator, City of Escalon. And I'd just like to give you a quick summary on how the transit system is performing and just answer any questions about E-Trans. As you know, the city has been operating E-Trans, which is a door-to-door dial-a-ride service within the city limits of Escalon. And then we have Route 35 that connects Escalon with Modesto 3 times a day, Monday through Friday. And service hours are primarily from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., excluding holidays. For the purposes of this annual report, since this relates to fiscal year 2019-2020, during that time period, we were still operating under a contract with San Joaquin RTD, who in turn subcontracted the service with National Express. As of July 1st, we have since transitioned that service, and we now contract with the city of Modesto, and we're using their National Express contract to operate E-Trans. And E-Trans is in essence a part of the Modesto Area Express system. So in theory, a user from Escalon can get a pass and be able to not only use it on E-Trans, but also use it on MAX. So they have better connectivity to MJC, Memorial Medical Center, South Modesto, and other destinations in the Modesto urban area. Also over the course of the fiscal year, RTD started a service called VanGo. It is a demand responsive service that operates countywide in a door-to-door manner, and Escalon residents can use it to connect to areas throughout San Joaquin County, and that service was available Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Saturdays and Sundays from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. They've since reduced the service to operate Monday through Friday only from 8 to 5. And the pricing is similar to what you would pay when you ride an Uber or a Lyft vehicle. In addition, in August of 2020, RTD's brought back County Hopper 95. So in essence, an Escalon rider can now connect directly to Stockton through Manteca 4 times a day, Monday through Friday. One thing notable about this year, as you know, we were in a pandemic. We did not reduce the transit system hours during the pandemic. However, we did institute additional cleaning protocols on the buses. We did social distancing. We provided hand sanitizers and masks to the riders to keep people safe. And since then, there's an order in place where passengers must always wear a mask when riding the bus. If you go to page, let's see, 10 of the report, or 81 of your packet, last fiscal year we carried 1,914 passenger trips, and we averaged about 7 passengers a day. And there was a decline in passenger trips just because of COVID-19. In the past fiscal year, we carried 2,315 passenger trips. And of that, on Escalon Dial-A-Ride, 1,195 of those trips were made on Escalon Dial-A-Ride, and 719 passenger trips were made on the route to Modesto. And page 82 of your packet has kind of a summary data chart if you like to see the performance metrics. We did implement the first low floor cutaway bus in a while on E-Trans, and that's the primarily used bus for the service. We still continue to have a minivan, and then we have a high floor 2011 cutaway bus that is due to be replaced later on this year with a low floor bus. Because of the pandemic, we did not do a whole lot of marketing to promote the service, since we really wanted folks to use the service for essential needs only. We also did not do the holiday light tour or the annual Stuff the Bus event, again, due to the pandemic. We're hoping that as we come out of the pandemic, we can start to resume marketing activities and doing some more community events, especially with the anticipated announcement the governor's going to reopen California on June 15th. Last fiscal year, in anticipation of contracting with the city of Modesto, the city council did authorize a fare increase to match the fares to the Modesto Area Express system. So as a result of that, we now use max passes on E-Trans. On page 88 of your packet, we still have performance objectives that we do have to meet. And for fiscal year 1920, we ended up meeting 2 of the 3 performance objectives in order to continue to use LTF funds to support our operations. Our operating cost was $81.13 per operating hour. Our passengers per hour was 1.89, which is a metric we did not meet, but our subsidy per passenger was $16.01. And that's because we have an infusion of federal funds and Measure K funds to support operations of the transit system. One thing to note, this past fiscal year, we were successful in getting American or FTA CARES Act funding to support transit operations. And for this fiscal year, we're going to be getting the FTA TRISTA funding as well as the American Rescue Act funding. So as a result of these extra federal funding sources, we're able to operate the transit system without using LTF. So this year's claim, we ended up putting 100% of the LTF to streets and roads. And we anticipate doing the same for next year. So some emerging things that council should be aware that is upcoming as we go into this fiscal year and beyond. And that is, we'll be discussing that on page 101 of your packet. The state has suspended the need for transit agencies to meet fare box recovery ratio or performance measures for 2 fiscal years. So as a result, we won't necessarily have to meet any performance measures as we work to rebuild ridership. And this will be revisited sometime in the fiscal year 22-23 timeframe. As I mentioned, we do need to replace one of our oldest buses in the fleet. We purchased that in 2011. We have grant funds to cover that cost of that bus, and that was approved in the budget in this current fiscal year. We want to continue to partner with the Escalon Senior Lunch Program, Paddock Manor, the school district to help grow ridership once the state reopens. Right now, we are doing transportation to help connect people to vaccine that the city manager has set up, and we'll continue to do various trips for that over the course of the next few months. The SJCOG has implemented their LTF policy with this upcoming fiscal year, which means that we will have to spend at least 25% of our LTF on transit-related issues, even if we don't have any unmet transit needs that are reasonable to meet. What we intend to do, and with council support, we will file next year's claim, leaving 25% in a reserve, but we would like to present a case to SJCOG that because of the unique nature of our city and our ability to get other grant funds, that we would like to see if we can request some type of an exemption from that policy. Otherwise, what's going to ultimately end up happening is as we continue to get grant funds to cover our transit program, we're going to have this super large reserve of LTF funds that just the transit system won't be able to utilize just because right now we have the transit system that's appropriate for our size. So just our unique rural nature, we believe that if we have no unmet transit needs that are reasonable to meet, and we're able to cover the transit system's costs through FTA funds, fare revenue, and Measure K funds, then we should be able to, in accordance with TVA law, be able to use LTF funds for streets and roads to continue to keep our roads maintained. RTD is studying their transit system. They've brought in a consultant to review their transit system, and they anticipate having that report done in November or December, which may result in some philosophical changes on how they provide services throughout San Joaquin County. So we're continuing to monitor that effort, and hopefully it will still continue to maintain some form of transit service to the city of Escalon. One big thing that took effect as of January 26th is that we currently have a contract with the city of Modesto to operate our transit system, and they contract with National Express. The city of Modesto, Stanislaus County recently created a joint powers authority known as the Stanislaus Regional Transit Authority. And they've been meeting since January of 26, 2021. And they're in the process of transitioning the MAC system and the START system into this new JPA. We've also been advised that our agreement with the city of Modesto would be in essence assigned to this JPA. And so we're being told at the present time things will operate the same for 1 year, but after 1 year, it is anticipated that they're going to start consolidating routes and trying to restructure the system to be the agency to be one cohesive transit system. And as part of that, they recently went out to bid for a new transit operator, which they anticipate that contractor will take over in January 1 of 2022. Depending on the outcome of that RFP process and this overall consolidation, it may require us to come back before council to amend the transit budget. So we'll keep the council posted on the efforts of that new joint powers authority. And there is a potential opportunity, if there's interest, that the city could, in essence, join the JPA if we wanted to do so. And we'll continue to analyze that and provide recommendations to the council and city manager to consider. We'll continue to pursue funding from various agencies to support our operations to reduce the spend on LTF. And the last thing I want to mention is that the California Air Resources Board implemented what is called the Innovative Clean Transit Regulation back on October 1 of 2019. We're going to be required to prepare a zero emissions bus rollout plan no later than January 1 of 2023. And we would have to start purchasing zero emission buses by January 1 of 2026, with the ultimate goal that all of our buses in our fleet must be zero emissions by 2040. So right now there's no electric or hydrogen-based cutaway or minivan vehicle available, but we're continuing to monitor the technology, and we anticipate putting together this rollout plan sometime next year. And we're hoping that we can partner with the other transit agencies in the county so we can do one rollout plan for all of us. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions about E-Trans, if there are any.
Gentlemen, any questions for Mr. John?
I do have some comments.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So, what was the cost to Escalon to run the E-Trans? And I'm not asking the cost of the city. What was the total cost in funding?
Our budget last fiscal year, and this is not counting capital, is $192,864.67.
And how much was brought in by riders fees?
Last fiscal year, we brought in, one second, about $1,900 in fares.
Okay.
Translates to
yeah,
about 2% comes from the passengers directly.
right. So, I'm sitting over here and everything you're saying, man, it's making me shake. This is such a loser of a program. So much tax dollars are being spent on this program. I know that you're throwing out all these programs and the things funded by this grant and this grant and this grant and this grant and this. All it is to me is taxpayer money. That's all it is. It's somebody's getting taxed. It's going into the fund and it's being filtered down to us. And you talk about LTF. I am astounded that this program still exists and the fact that 2% of the people that ride are paying for it, and 98% of it is totally subsidized. I'm probably the only one up here that feels this way because, yes, people ride the bus and it takes them someplace that they need to go. But as a fiscal conservative, I cannot sit up here and be okay with this. I was going to bring this up earlier, or actually later, about the E-Trans and the dial-a-ride with another topic, but we can sit up here and talk about, well, it doesn't affect us because we get the LTF money, right? It goes to our roads and our streets. I am speaking on principle here that this is wasting so much of taxpayer money, and I don't care where it comes from. This is a huge loser of a program, and I personally, as a member of the city council, I cannot willingly sit up here and go, this is good for us. The ridership is so low, the use is so little, the cost is so high, and I can't sit by and willingly agree to any other continuation of this program. Like I said, I'm probably the only one up here, but I have got to make that point. Thank you.
All right, does anyone else like to speak regarding the transit update? Anyone in the audience like to speak about the transit update? Anybody online? Okay, well, we've had this conversation many a times before, and John, I appreciate your hard work. I don't think there's any more to be said. If there isn't, I think we're done.
Okay.
Thank you, John. Okay, let's move on. Where are we now? I think we're at the consent calendar. Let me check here.
No.
Matters presented from the audience. There we go. The public may address the city council on any item that is on the agenda at the time the item is called. The public may also address the city council on any item not on the agenda that is within the authority of the city council. Each speaker is limited to a maximum of 5 minutes. Unused time may not be yielded to any other speaker. The determination of whether an item is within the authority of the city council is discretionary decision by the mayor. All right, is there anyone out there who would like to approach us and speak on anything that you're interested in? Come to this and just give us your name, I believe is what the procedure is these days.
Yeah. Dave Willis, 425 Sultana Way. I don't know if this is in your jurisdiction at all, but earlier today I was out riding my bike. I crossed 120 from the Arco station, came across on the west side, and I wanted to go from the west side back over to the side where the Wright's Petroleum, and that I wanted to cross that way. I wanted to cross McHenry that way.
Did you go through the intersection or did you go around the intersection?
No, I went through the crosswalks. I came on the crosswalk.
On your bike.
I was on the crosswalk.
Got it.
I stopped and I pushed the little button. I wanted to cross McHenry now.
Okay.
That crosswalk is set in such a way that more than once, and today, I almost threw my bicycle at these people because as the light, the signal for the cross was okay, but also it does the light. And people coming off McHenry, or off 120 eastbound, turning onto McHenry southbound, they don't slow down. And this is about the fourth or fifth time almost been hit there. You know, and if I'd have had a rock, I'd have thrown it at them. You know, I don't know what you can do. Maybe reset the lights that the crosswalk is different than the traffic lights or something. But some days, some little kid, and I've seen little kids over there, and you know how they like to take off. If somebody comes around that corner not paying attention, they're gonna hit them. I don't know who can do anything about it, but I just wanted to make you aware of it.
All
Thank
right,
you.
I think that's Caltrans, is it not? So Caltrans is being, I guess we could submit a request for review, could we not?
Yeah, we can.
Let's request, if council members don't have a heartache over, can we do that? All right, so let's do that and see if we can resolve that. We don't want Dave splattered out. He's the only night guy we got to drive around this town. All right. Is there anyone else out there who'd like to come and speak on any item regarding our city or anything you got on your mind? Anybody online? Okay, it looks like we're getting down to the administrative matters. Go ahead, staff. It's the authorizing and filing of the low carbon transit operation program application.
John Nando will be presenting this item.
Oh, okay.
Yes, all right. Good evening again. John Ando, Transit Coordinator. This is just seeking authorization from council to authorize us to pursue what is called a low carbon transit operations program fund to basically provide free fares for Escalon residents to ride E-Trans. We've done this grant for the last 2 years, which has helped provide additional fare revenue to the transit system and allow our residents to use E-Trans free of charge. We do get these funds allocated to us by the state through the state controller's office, as well as by the San Joaquin Council of Governments. And these funds can only be used basically for enhancements to transit service or free fares. And we just request council's approval, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Council members, do you have questions for Mr. Andel? Is it Andel? Andel. Mr. Andel. Are there since there are any questions, how about anyone in the audience? Got any questions for this gentleman regarding the carbon transit operation? Doesn't look like it. Anybody online? Doesn't look like it. So we'll bring it back. And what is it you're asking us for this evening, staff?
Asking council to authorize myself and the city manager to file this application for $738 to allow for free fares on E-Trans.
Does this require a vote, Tammy?
Yes.
All right, gentlemen, I will accept the motion.
I am going to make a motion to deny this request. This is just 700 and some odd dollars of taxpayer money going to subsidize a program that's losing 98% of its money every year.
Do we have a second? Okay, I will accept a motion to accept.
I will move to adopt the resolution authorizing the city manager, transit coordinator, or designate to apply for low carbon transit operation program funds.
Okay, do we have a second for that?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
It carries 4-1. Thank you, John, for your report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Appreciate your time.
All righty. All right, now we'll consider the ratification of the San Joaquin County Government's annual financial plan for the fiscal year 2021-22.
Mayor, in accordance with our joint powers agreement between COG and members of the agencies in San Joaquin County, each governing body is tasked to review and ratify COG's annual financial plan following adoption by the COG board. On March 25th, 2021, the COG board adopted the attached annual financial plan for fiscal year 2021 to 2022. Attached to the staff report is the letter from Steve Dial, the Deputy Executive Director, Chief Financial Officer for COG, outlining the financial plan along with the financial plan. SJ COG staff Steve Dial is online tonight to answer any questions that the council might have it. Staff is recommending council review and ratify the San Joaquin Council of Governments Annual Financial Plan.
Gentlemen, are there any questions for Mr. Dial?
I have none. I was at the meeting.
Councilman Crummage? Councilman Swift? And Vice Mayor?
No questions.
So there are no questions, so what is it you'd like us to do? Just,
To ratify, basically by a vote,
okay, I'll
the
accept the
acceptance
motion.
of their plan.
Move on staff's recommendation.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Dial.
Easiest meeting you're gonna have, Steve.
All right. Let's see, now we're on, it looks number 8, discussion only, senior housing DIF.
So this item was requested at our last meeting by Councilmember Crumick.
Okay.
So I don't,
Do I take it away?
yep, you can take it away.
Okay. Well, thank you. So I'd like discussion on my proposal that I distributed throughout the community about lowering develop impact fees for a targeted senior housing development with a sunset time period ending in December 31st, 2025. So I believe what we need to discuss tonight is what we want to do about that. We had consensus to move forward with this, so I assume there was some agreement from the council that this was a good idea, but this good idea will die if we do not get it on paper and get it on the books. So again, my proposal is a 50% reduction in all development fees for a targeted senior housing project until 2025. So with that, I will open up the discussion with my fellow council members.
All right, Councilman Bellinger.
I'd like to, we've got some slides come up here, and it's gonna answer some of my questions of where our current fee structure looks like. Also comparison, obviously, we've got some other towns we'd asked for that. I'd like to kind of take a look at that, first I'm seeing of this. And then if we were to
Yeah, that's the
reduce those, how much are we actually looking, to discount for any kind of projects going forward? And I guess somewhere along the lines, we're gonna have to discuss qualifying projects, what that actually means, and those sort of questions as well, but.
This is gonna be a lengthy discussion. There's a lot involved with this, and there's gonna be a lot of ideas, and we're not gonna solve any problems tonight, but we'll definitely discuss it. David, Councilman.
What is the, I guess on this, for the impact fees for the S and other communities, SRF and MFR, what are those?
So single-family resident and multifamily resident.
And that would be considered per unit, depending on,
Correct.
That's current.
Let me just bring up a quick point here so we don't get off topic. I know the discussion has brought up a lot. Well, how do we compare to other cities? I am not interested in that at all. I am not interested in how we compare to Ripon or Houston or Waterford or Oakdale. What I'm concerned is, and let me bring up a specific point. We had a project that was brought before us. We had plans. We talked about it. If you guys will remember, it was only a few council meetings ago about the Klessens property. And we had a developer that wanted to build 18 townhomes on that property. And what killed that development, and let's be clear on this, is the fees were too high.
No.
The fees were too high. And the developer came and asked us to reduce the fees, and from my understanding, the seller of the property did not want to wait to see if that would happen, and the developer pulled out of that project. If anybody, wants to talk about that, then we can go ahead and do that. But the fees are too high, and I'm not worried about Waterford or Ripon and these comparisons of other towns. What I'm worried about is, how do we get a project, how do we stimulate a senior housing development in this town? And I realize there's gonna be significant pushback, but that's what I wanna talk about tonight. I'm not really interested in looking at how we compare with other cities, because, okay, it looks like we're lower than Ripon on a few, we're higher than Houston, here we go. Okay, so our fees are normal. I'm talking about from the developer's perspective, okay? If they're gonna build a project, it's not gonna pencil out. So what can we do? That's all I'm asking. What can we do?
Vice Mayor, do you have something you want to add?
I don't think it was the fees that killed that project. I like being bold and looking for ways to move projects forward, but I also think that this is, how to incentivize developers and people with property in town, how to incentivize them to build the type of project that we want has been discussed many times. And based on those discussions, reaching out to property owners, trying to work some sort of deals with them that if they're gonna build a particular type of project, that's the kind that we would support. We have money that can be used for incentives or to subsidize these types of projects and all. So the only concern I have is I don't know that this is what motivates a developer. Those fees are, what if we waived all of them? What if we just postpone repayment of some of those? I mean, I don't want to tie our hands with this. I agree, we need the housing, we need senior housing, we need projects to move forward, but I don't know that this is the right way to go.
What I would suggest, and I understand your eagerness, and I brought this senior project up quite a while ago, and your desire to do it and the way you want to approach it. The problem I'm having with it is this. It goes to, you talked about the buses and how you hated subsidizing that situation, but here again, that's what we're doing here. By reducing these fees, we're going to be subsidizing this project. So it's kind of the same thing.
It's not the same.
Well, it is in my mind. But anyway, here's what I think. I think we need to look at this, and I've talked with staff, and staff I've asked to reach out to a couple local universities and junior colleges to see if there would be any assistance on having someone draw up our future community, senior community. And Tammy's done that. And she's gotten responses from how many?
Just UOP.
UOP, and they've offered to help in some capacity to draw up the conceptual, not the engineering part of it, but the conceptual plan. What I wanted to do, in my mind, if we're dealing with this whole thing, first of all, I don't want government involved with this very much at all. And the reason for that is that the restrictions and the cost is just ridiculous. Because everything's prevailing wage, and we'll never, or it's gonna be a struggle to get these built. So if we take the conceptual plan, and maybe we can talk to a college about the engineering aspects, so we can get a set of plans drawn and put it out to bid, and then find investors who might want to be invested in something like this. And as far as reduction in fees, at that time, maybe we could look at something, but I don't know what it would be. I'm afraid to bring, as much as I could keep government out of it, I think we'd all benefit better off by it. It'd be cheaper and probably more likely to get done. That's my situation. I understand yours and I respect your efforts, but I just don't agree with that process.
Can I
Sure,
respond to that real quick?
Sure.
So your plan is to go to a college and have some engineering students draw up a plan for a development, take that plan out to a developer and see what they can build it for. Is that your idea?
That's so far correct.
So the problem with that is that's not the way that development works. The way that development works is a developer will see a piece of property and they will hire, like the developer who came here and proposed his development to us. He had a piece of property. He hired Benchmark Engineering out of Stockton, I believe, maybe Modesto. They drew up the plan and they bring it to us. The way you're looking about it is not at all how it is done. That's not how it's done. The way we incentivize the developer is we reduce our fees. If anybody has any better idea, and I haven't heard a single one since I've been on this city council, and I've been on here, 2 years, right? So I haven't seen much. But I know that we should try something different. And really, what's the cost of the city? I've heard people go, well, we're subsidizing the developer. Well, okay, in one way, that makes sense. But in another way, if you stimulate development, what you're going to get is new property taxes, new sales taxes, which are the two funding mechanisms which fund basically all of our government. So we need to keep that in mind, that unless you have, increased revenues in sales tax and property tax, then you're gonna be at a net loss with your revenues for the city.
Your premise is based on people with property in town wanting to do that. The problem is that Ed proposed reaching out to the property owners. That was done with very little interest in anybody developing anything. It's a type of development that creates problems for people, and people that have property within the city limits are not predisposed to build this kind of a project. The project that was proposed over on First Street, although looked good on paper, the developer wanted us to subsidize him significantly so he would make a profit. When you talk to the people that lived in that community, they were absolutely against that project because they felt it was going to impact their property values. That with that kind of a project in there, they wanted single-family homes that were similar in size to what's over there now. So you're starting with certain assumptions that aren't necessarily true, and based on our conversations with property owners and dealing with this issue over the last few years, this is not the way to incentivize them, in my opinion. Is it something that we could do? Say you got somebody that wants to come in and build on the old livestock property. Is it something that we would consider? Absolutely. But you've got to get that developer that wants to do something, or that property owner that's willing to, put that kind of a project together. Last time Ann was here, she talked about some of the things that the seniors wanted. Having some sort of a development that was close to the community center and within walking distance that would be developed specifically for seniors, smaller, maybe apartments or single family type dwellings. What that triggered is when we were talking about it, we thought, okay, what she's describing is the property next to the community center, our 19 acres that we have out there. Ideal location, perfect for that type of a project. That's an incentive that I could get behind. If you want to bring in a project and we got 3 acres that we can carve out and put it there, all for it. The thing is finding that developer, and once you get the developer, then you can negotiate any type of agreement you want with them. We could waive all the fees if it's the right project. So I think that's where we have to go back to the beginning and say, okay, if we really want to see this done, we have to provide property, and we have to provide some sort of financial incentive to do it. And if we have the property and we're willing to dedicate it, I think that's the way to go. If you know of a property owner in town that is willing to build this type of a project in a desirable location, the community is supportive of it, the senior community likes the location and it would be beneficial to them, again, we can find all sorts of incentives. But again, it's starting with the premise that there's somebody out there that wants to build this.
I appreciate that, Mayor Pro Tem Legero, and I just have a couple points. Let me ask staff really quick. When developers have come to you, whether it's anybody in the past, do they ever bring up the cost of fees as an issue?
They express that the city's fees, along with the cost in construction, makes it infeasible.
So they do bring up the cost of fees?
Cost of fees and cost of construction,
Sure.
which have continued to go up.
Which is what they do, they build things.
Yes, but none of them except for the last one, in the last few years, have been senior housing. It's all been either single-family residential housing or apartment complex, multifamily, not specific to seniors. And we always advise them that that's what we'd like to see. That's what we're interested in as seniors. So for the most part, yes, money is the issue, because like you said, with developers, and the last developer that was here for that other project said, 20 years ago we were building, you make a lot of money. It's not like that anymore. And that is what we've heard from other people who are interested too. We don't make big money on projects like we used to. We make just enough to make it feasible and walk away, not in the hole, But I'm not a developer, so I don't know specifically on that. But yes, fees are an issue, but I mean, it's not just city fees, they're paying county fees, they're paying other fees, related to construction, relating to contractors.
Let me ask another question. If we were to reduce our developer impact fees that we have the ability to control in the city, if we were to reduce those by 50% and we were able to market that, do you believe that would incentivize some developers to contact us to possibly do a project?
I think that would make a lot of developers contact us, but I wouldn't be, I don't know if you would get experienced developers that would be willing to build what we're looking for.
I don't think we know what we're looking for
Yeah,
quite
I mean,
yet.
and that's still in process as well. I know we've talked about, we're moving forward with our municipal services review. We're moving forward with design guidelines that would help us with senior housing and multifamily projects. You know, those type of items all come into play to solidify and put in a document what it is we're looking for so that we can move forward with it and essentially expedite projects.
So what we're doing wrong right now is we're talking about trying to figure out what we want, and then we can go tell the developer what we want. That's not how it works. We're doing it backwards. If we were to lower our fees by 50%, the onus now is on the developer to create a project to bring before the city for approval. You guys understand that? So, and also the 19 acres between the community center and the golf course. Everybody in town, everybody I've talked to agrees that would be a wonderful place for a senior development. I haven't heard anybody say that that's a bad idea. Okay, so the question is, how do we stimulate that? We can sit up here and go, well, we need to wait for a developer to come to us with the correct project. I am finding a way to stimulate the developer to come and bring it to us. And I hope everybody understands that. If we enact this, what could happen? That's my question. What's the greatest harm that could be done to our community if we enact this? If we put this on an agenda item, we vote on it, we go through the whole process, and we say we're reducing our developer impact fees for a targeted senior housing project until 2025. Okay? What is the great harm that's going to happen to the community? What could possibly happen besides we get a lot of projects on our table that we go, hey, these look great. Let's take a look at it. Can somebody answer me that?
Well, I think the gist of the question at this point is, at what point do we, I think there's a great card to play. I think there's a great card to have in our arsenal. So the only question at this point is, again, if we harken back to the first workshop on this, everybody was in agreement. Great idea. What the planner suggested there is that you have basically a package. Here's what we're looking for. As a community, we are in the market for this kind of development with these kind of amenities. Okay, and that's what you market to the developers. By the way, is there going to be a next meeting?
Yeah, we have it set for April 26th.
Okay. So at any rate, and that's, I think, one of the things we're going to hone in on the next meeting. So what can we do to create that package so that we can market that to the developers? The only question is, I think that what you'd like to do is have this as part of that package, like right from the get-go. By the way, and if you develop here, development fees half off. And I think that there might be a hesitancy on everybody else's part to say, do we want to use that card right now? Or do we want to keep that in our arsenal for down the road? Like if it's the right project, we do have some impact monies, that we can also throw towards it, Or if it's the right project, do we work out something with 3-4 acres out there at beyond Hogan that we could do something with? In all of these cases, it is going to be a subsidy involved, and especially if we lower the developer impact fees in the situation, that's a subsidy. If we bite off 3 or 4 acres for this project, that is essentially the subsidy, because those monies should be going back to the Parks Fund, but that's okay. There are things that a community subsidizes. We just had a discussion about our transit. Like you correctly pointed out, almost all subsidy. We subsidy rec.
And we all agreed to approve that.
Yeah, they all become quality of life issues. And so we might be willing, as Mayor Pro Tem Logero mentioned, to subsidize these impact fees as well. It all depends on how badly we want this. So I think to me, the only question is, do we put this as part of the package, or do we keep this in the back of our mind as a card we might need to play? And I think just the fact that we're having this discussion means that we're all willing to think about this as a card we might want to play down the road to help make this happen. I don't know about putting it in this package that we're going to market to developers as an opening salvo.
Councilman Swift, just in response to that, we've put a lot of things on the back burner. We put a lot of things in our mind for later on, and they just go away.
Oh, I know, and I agree.
Just go away.
I agree.
What I'm trying to do is get something actually done here.
Right.
On the books that we can go and take out as something to actually market.
You know,
And we haven't tried this before.
Right.
And we have a need for senior housing. And the onus that people want to put up here, all the council, is on the developer. Let the developer find the property. Let the developer, make it work for them so they can. We're trying to work with them. Yeah, are we going to have to give a little bit? Yes, we are. Do you want to call it a subsidy? So be it. What are we trying to get in the community? We're trying to get senior housing. How can we affect that up here?
But at what point do we give that little bit?
And how much do we give?
So there is a
50%.
process. There is a process that you can do where you put out a request for proposals from the developers with an outlined plan. So
How come we have never done that?
And also, we give them a drawing that we get free.
it's never been put out there to go forward
Nobody's
with it.
ever wanted senior housing?
Well, no, we
So the
have.
last time we did a request for proposals, and I wasn't here at the time, we did that with our own property, City Hall and Police Department. We had this property, it was our property, we wanted a project to be developed on that property, and from my understanding, the city put out a request for proposals, which asked people, and I haven't seen it, so I don't know how specific
I don't
it
think it
was
was
to
a
things.
specific RFP.
Okay, it wasn't
We reached
specific.
out to developers
Okay,
trying
we
to
did
do
reach and
that.
have them, and so we did receive a couple different projects, and then the council narrowed down which project they wanted in that location.
Part of that was because there was the design build process.
Yeah,
So the first problem is property. And we have the property, and we have the property to designate in the right location for the right project.
and I would agree from the past developers that we've talked to and met with over the last several months, land is their number one thing. If you can provide land, we can make everything else work for you.
You got the developer, and you can give them all the incentives in the world, but if they can't build it anywhere, it goes nowhere. And that is, we have talked to property owners over the years. We have thrown every possible incentive at them to do it, and they just have not budged. So the starting point is, we have the property. In that process to get that property, the 19 acres by Hogan Park, that was a process in itself, because that property used to be the property off of Ulrey and
Brennan,
Jim Choles
Dolly.
was there, right? Or
Yeah.
whoever, the old Shaw Ranch is what I remember it as. And so, that property, it took a process to be able to sell that or swap it and get the property that we have over here. Then we got the 19 acres over here, and the idea was you got 19 acres, so you have a lifetime supply of land that we can build out and build if we need more ball fields, a skate park, whatever it is, we had the property. 19 acres is a lot of property. That's a lot more than we have in Hogan Park right now, and probably a lot more than we're ever gonna need in our lifetime. What we do need is senior housing. We need a location where they can access the parks, the community center, all the amenities, all the services. That's what we're looking for. So I appreciate you pushing the issue, Peter, because I think that's absolutely what needs to be done. It's how do we move it forward? And I think the best way to move it forward is we dedicate some property, and then we go out with an RFP, or we go out to developers that we know. I don't think we have the design build anymore. I believe there was a sunset on that. But that, that gave us a lot of flexibility in being able to go to Brayton and say, hey, Brayton and Sons, will you build this for us? And here's the dollar amount that we have to spend on it. We may not have that option anymore, but it's certainly something to look at. So, if we really want to see this, we have to provide the property, and then we can talk about the incentive package to get those developers to come in and do it.
That 19
Makes
acres
sense.
is it's not in the city limits, though.
It isn't, but we're in process of a municipal services
Yeah, but
review.
how much longer is that gonna take?
It should be coming to council for review, November, December, and so.
And then it goes to LAFCO?
And it has to be done anyway. I mean,
And
it's
then it
gonna
goes to
have to be
LAFCO?
done for us to move
Yes.
forward on that project.
And then LAFCO approves it, and then it's in the city?
No,
And then you
then you go
annex.
the annex.
How long does that take?
We're gonna try our best to run them simultaneously to save time, so when we get to a certain point on the municipal services review, we're gonna start processing that annexation, and so we've been advised from LAFCO staff in the past, as well as our consultant, that we should be able to put them both on the same meeting, approve the MSR, and then move forward with approving the annexation. So we're going to do our best to time it as such, so that it happens at the same time.
So
So end of the
December
year.
of 2021,
year.
it'll be within the city
Beginning
limits.
of 2022.
Beginning of next year.
That's gonna be our annexation and our MSR to clean up the properties and bring that into the city limits.
Correct.
Okay, and so it sounds like at this point, we're talking about designating some land of that 19 acres for a specific project that we can attach this proposal to. Am I understanding this correctly?
I think the problem before is the city has limited open space or buildable lots within the city limits. And those, for whatever reason, the property owners have different plans for it, they're not ready to develop it, whatever it is, or they're not interested in the project that we're looking for. Not for lack of reaching out to them, not for lack of saying, hey, who's interested? Is anybody interested in a land swap? Is anybody interested in some sort of a sale to make this happen? So, because that is, in my mind, that is the major impediment to moving it forward, because the developer can't develop anything if they don't have anything to develop. So, if we have the property, if we can do something with that 19 acres, then we can certainly reach out to developers and talk to them about, hey, we're looking at an incentive package on this. What would entice you to build on this,
Free land would be pretty nice.
Well, that's it, and you talk about subsidies,
That's a
that's
big one.
exactly the kind
Well-
of subsidy that we gotta
That's the big one.
look at.
It seems like, I'm happy that we're having the discussion and finally about that 19 acres and what to do. I've put out a public document before about my plan, which was that the city of Escalon should get out of the business of farming. That 19 acres is ideally suited for a senior development. It sounds like we're kind of moving in that direction. And I'm happy with the discussion and I appreciate it. I just want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make this happen and not just pushing it to the back burner, hoping that it all works out. Because that's not how things happen. And that's not our job up here. So I'll leave it at that. Any other questions, I guess?
So just so I can be clear with your numbers here, city staff, we're looking at multi-facility, at 35 there, we're looking to cut costs. We're gonna give a developer 500 and we'll round up to 560 and almost 800 on a 50 unit. Is that correct then? I'm reading that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
That is the slicing in half of our fees for that development. That being said, what's 3-4 acres worth at our 19-acre facility roughly worth, you think?
Don't know.
It's worth to the builder because they have no place to build.
Well, it's
So there's
expensive if they have to
inherent
buy
more
it, I'll tell
value
you.
there. And going back, I know you don't believe you need to worry about other people in the area, well, what their fees are, Peter, but they're challenged with that same issue in the whole valley for like-minded cities. Houston, these other, and I'm not just apples to apples, they're close. They're all in the same general ballpark for fees. So if that's the case, and this is the sticking point, then we can't build any senior housing anywhere in the valley if it's up to the developer fees as the make or break for their project. So I don't think the developer fees are the major hang at this point. I would agree with Mayor Pro Tem Legero that the land would be more of an incentive to kickstart it with an ability to discuss more incentive at the point, but I don't think we should lock in, if we're offering land to start with, I don't think we should, in my opinion, be giving away impact fees at the get-go.
I totally disagree with that because, and my reasoning is, you're saying the developer fees are not the sticking point for a developer. I might agree with you, the cost of lumber is up 300%. Maybe they don't want to build because they can't make any money because the cost of wood's too high.
Yeah.
That's fine. We can't affect that. I can't go out and, dictate the price of a commodity. What I can do up here is lower a certain fee. I can put a certain discount out there that may incentivize a developer. So I'll agree with you, and I'm not saying that the developer fees are the sticking point solely, but I'm saying that's all we can do up here to stimulate senior housing development in this town. If we want it, which we do, people in the community want it, what are we gonna do about it?
Councilman Crummage, let's move out to the audience here and see if there's any feedback on what we've been discussing here this evening. Is there anyone who'd like to come up and speak regarding the conversation and discussion we've had this evening regarding senior housing?
I would just like to comment that when I first heard about this, I had to ask some questions and do my own research. And I guess the question I have is, why not? This is a new idea. None of you seem to know whether it would work or whether it wouldn't work. Why not? If it's an attraction to bring somebody in, and you're not going to know until you try it. And I don't think the cost of doing that is so great that it wouldn't profit us in the long run. So I'm recommending that you think seriously about it and just ask yourselves, why not?
All right, Ann.
Give it a try.
Thank you, Ann. Is there anyone else out there who'd like to speak? Please come to the podium.
Yeah, hi, Kirk Danzer, 389 Noni. I'm glad we're having the discussion too. Thank you, Pete, for bringing it up. A couple of things that haven't been discussed wholly here, and it's like you said, Mayor Alms, there's a lot to discuss. One thing about the developer on First Street was what he called low-income senior housing was not low-income senior housing. $400,000 to $500,000 is what my house costs. And I said at the time at that meeting, who's going to trade their house now for something smaller? He was building some very nice, expensively laid out units, but we need to decide what we're going to call low-income housing here. Are we going to use the state's definition? Are we going to create our own definition? That's going to put a limitation on developers' profit. And I'll go back to the project that's going on right now over on Countrywood. We have the 3 new homes going up. That was first requested to be apartments in that little slot there. And the developer came in and said, I can't make any money with apartments. I got to charge for these big houses. That's what you're up against. When I was with Measure K Citizens Group there, I sat next to a big developer, who I forget which city he represented. And he says, you know why you don't see apartment houses anymore? And I said, yeah, I don't see them going up. He said, because those were all doctor consortiums. That's when all the doctors had group practices, and then the laws changed, and the paperwork's changed, and now everybody's working for Kaiser or Sutter and these big things. So those groups broke up, and those were the people that invested in apartment complexes. So you don't see them anymore. They lived off the rent. They weren't worried about the cost of, necessarily the cost of development. So we need to know what the cost of these units are going to be that are going to be affordable to seniors. And, if $400,000 is it, so be it. But I don't know that seniors want to pay that kind of money. So that may mean you need to have more units, make it profitable for the developer. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. And yeah, it was just high senior housing. It's not low income housing. The other thing low income housing does, and no one's going to want to hear this, is it lowers our MHI, which makes us available for grants and loans, public works projects and things of that nature. And I know that's down the road. That's just a thought in the stratosphere. But we need to have low-income housing here. We just don't have any. I'm a proponent of that. And as much for seniors as I am for people that work in this community here that make, $6, $7 an hour. I lived in an apartment when I was 20 years old. I paid $125 a month. And both my wife and I were working and going to school. So, you know, it's nice to have some low-income housing, but the apartments aren't there anymore. So, yes, you got to work with some developers, but we need to have a plan. What is it that we actually want to see? The land idea is such a good idea. I'm just, you know, for it. I don't know that that's included in the MSR.
We're definitely gonna be looking into it, and it is our property. It's utilities that we need to dig in deeper, and in the next few months, we'll get that information that we need in order to better evaluate that.
But it's not included in the current MSR that's going through.
We're gonna try our best to include at least that portion if we can make it work.
Okay.
Yeah, we talked about that at the affordable housing or the senior housing meeting we had a few weeks ago or 3 weeks ago or so, trying to include that in our list of available land. If we could get that, at least the piece that we figure out how large or how much is needed, to at least bring in that portion, which we would probably have to split it from the rest of it. At least bring in that lot if it's feasible.
Yeah, okay. Well, I just I'd like to see it included in there so we could get moving along on it, like you're saying. And so that was my points. Thank you.
Okay, now, I have a question for staff. Can the city sell those 3 acres to a developer and divest themselves of the land?
We can, we'd have to do a parcel split.
Okay. I was just wondering if we were able to give a developer that land at an extraordinarily good price and divest ourselves. And the reason for divesting ourselves is get away from all the government standards we're gonna be stuck with when we go to build this thing. If we can somehow, you talk about cutting fees, that's how you cut your fees. You get away from government and let somebody build it independent outside of this arrangement they call prevailing wage, and you can afford to build a place like that. You will never, I mean hardly ever get to build this thing this way. It's just too expensive. So,
Mayor Alves, it would also have to go through the Surplus Land Act first.
whatever it takes. I think it's possible, is it not?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
There's
Well, let's
certainly
take one
procedure.
step at a time here. Don't burst my bubble yet. So, if we could divest ourselves and get this property at a reasonable rate to a developer as an incentive, and get it away from government, then I think we could get somebody interested. But as long as we're tied to all these standards that you're trying to avoid by these fees, we're not going anywhere. I'm telling you that right now. I've been on this thing for 27 years, Peter. I've seen this over and over. It's just like your transit thing you had tonight with this gentleman. I've been where you are 100 times, but to come to realize there's nothing you're gonna do about it. This is not gonna change. If you want this to happen, let's find a way to get that property to a developer at a cost that is phenomenal. So he then can move forward outside of the government, you'll get it built. You will not get it built otherwise. It's just too costly.
Let's do it.
So just to point out, because we've had these discussions too, most developers, even if they're building deed-restricted senior housing, are gonna wanna build it at market rate. And that's where the issue we've had with the cost for the units. They're gonna want them to be at market rate to where they're acquiring enough money for rent every month in perpetuity of the project to make sure that they're getting enough money to fund and make it feasible.
There's nothing we could do about that.
No, and so that's where we've had these discussions where we talked about the difference between state affordable and what's affordable, which the word I'd like to use that our city engineer put out there was attainable. Not necessarily low income, attainable housing, that's still a reasonable price, for someone over the age of 62 or 65, we've discussed, not
We had
necessarily.
the discussion with a gentleman from Ripon who had investors involved before this COVID took off. He was putting together investors to buy property and build these units we're referring to. Now maybe the COVID's kind of slowed down a little bit. We can go back and try to cultivate some kind of a deal again with this guy and whether or not his investors are still interested. Because it's going to take an investor group to build these.
So, and like with our discussions that we had with the property owners that own and maintain and manage Heritage House, they talk about senior housing, and them and another developer that we were working with as well, that was looking at the auction yard about a year ago. They like to apply to the state for those tax credits, the state and federal government. They want to be able to apply for those credits that can be put towards the property, and as long as it's a certain portion of it is deed restricted, affordable at state standard and stuff. It subsidizes it and makes it easier for a mixture of those projects where you have some market rate, some low income, and then that allows for what we're looking for, which is in between that amount. And
But
so
you're also coming
we
in with
have-
caveats too.
It does. It
lot of them.
comes with caveats for the portion that's deed restricted low income, according to the state. But that's how they get those projects through. That's how a lot of them are being funded, and that's how they're getting that money long term, because in essentially those low income units that are deed restricted bring in the county and the state funding, and so they cover that difference. The rate is $1,100 a month for that one bedroom apartment, according to income and rent limitations put on them through the state. They can only pay up to $600, and so that remaining $500 gets subsidized by San Joaquin County Housing Authority. And that's how it's paid, because as long as it's deed restricted, the county will continue to pay that offset. So the person owning the property is still getting that full $1,100, and they adjust to the market changes. So the market goes up, the price goes up, market rate, it gets re-evaluated to offset that difference.
Okay,
So-
go ahead.
But then it goes
So,
prevailing.
let's just, go ahead.
But then, like Tammy mentioned, because of those involved,
Those
it's a prevailing
incentives,
wage project.
it becomes prevailing because there's government
the
money
problem.
involved.
So let's assume if we were to move forward with Peter's recommendation and reduce those fees, we have to define the type of project first, right? Or else we run the risk of lowering the fees and then having somebody come in and say, here's my senior housing project. And then we're like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't meet our needs. And they say, well, wait, I say it does. And then you get into a big argument over
Lawsuit.
what that senior project definition is, right?
There's potential for open to interpretation, or, yeah.
Okay, so step one, if we are gonna reduce those fees, and I'm looking at it this way, I'm taking what Peter is proposed, and it makes more sense to try and incentivize somebody within the city limits already. And say, hey, look, you got property, we want that property developed. If we work in conjunction with you to find a developer to bring in this project, are willing to reduce the fees. We'll cut them in half, 50%. So let's assume that we do that. We would have to have that project defined. We'd have to have the details of that project already on the books before we can make that pitch, right?
I would definitely recommend that, because you would run into some hiccups in between that would ultimately stop it from
Right.
moving forward, and you don't know how long it would take to resolve them, or if it makes that developer lose interest in moving forward. And
And
then
that
we
go-
kind of get left in a process.
Yeah, that goes directly to Kurt's point. If you don't define it, you don't know what it is, then how are you gonna apply the fees to it? All right, so there's a couple, at least one major step that we'd have to take before we could make that offer of the reduced fees. I'm willing to pursue that. If that, like Ann says, why not? And Peter says, why not? Well, let's do it right. And if we can develop that plan that we can attach this reduced fee to, I think that is how you might incentivize somebody with property already in the city limits. But at the same time, based on our history trying to make that happen, there have been no takers.
Zero.
They show a little interest for a minute, but then they walk away from it. So on a parallel track, we start looking at the property that we do have. We look at the 19 acres, at least, splitting off a few acres from there. We look at that as that's the carrot. Much like the reduced developer fees are the carrot to the developer. Now we've got the property, that's the carrot that we can offer to try and get the project that we want in. It can cover all the needs that Ann brought to us before. Here's what people are looking for. This is the type of housing. It's not necessarily low income, but I love the word attainable, or it's maintainable if you are on a fixed income and it's the type of living conditions that you want, So whether it's like Samaritan Village, Hospice House, and you have all these variety of aging in place options on that parcel. To me, that's where we really have control. Whether we split it off, we make a deal with the developer, we sell them the property based on them developing this project, and we also have the ability to bring them in, to annex them in, which allows us to control the entire project. I mean, it's a win-win, I think. So, but I appreciate Peter pushing the issue and trying to get this, fast-tracked to make sure that this does not fall through the cracks. So I think we have some good options.
So let's go back to what Tammy said earlier. Tammy said that there was a process called what, proposal, you go RFP, is that what you said?
Request for proposals.
Okay, but in order to do that, we have to have a proposal.
You need the defined project.
Right.
And
And you wouldn't-
potentially the land.
Exactly. Well, the land, I don't think is as big as issue as other things. We have options in terms of the land. We have the 3 acres. We have 7 we could trade for something if we wanted to get the land. I think that's part of the problem, but not the major part. I think the major part is to decide what project we're looking for.
And I mean, you could use your, in lieu of affordable housing monies to help entice the developers.
Right, but don't we?
Which is how other cities have did it for their senior
Okay,
projects.
but first of all, we have to have concept, don't we not? We need a
Sure.
concept, we need something to put on paper, so we can all look at it and say, yay, that's what we want. Well, now we got the concept. So once we get the concept, and we all can agree on that, then we could go out to the RFP if we wanted, and get some feedback in terms of who might or may not be interested, with the incentive of some land maybe in the process. So I think maybe the first thing we need to do is the 23rd, we have our meeting?
26.
26, we have our meeting, we try to solidify a plan, and then we put the plan together, and we move from there. That sound reasonable?
Yeah, that's the workshop, yep.
And you've got UOP.
UOP is currently working on something for us, I believe.
No, they're not working on anything for us at this time
But they're
because we
willing
don't
to.
have, they're willing to.
Okay, good.
Will they be at the workshop?
That's an interesting idea.
I can ask the
That's a great
professor.
idea. Good idea.
Maybe they can-
Actually, I'm pretty sure I gave her the information for the go-to meeting already.
Mark, do you have
Or
something you wanna
go-to
add?
workshop.
I was just gonna make sure there wasn't any more public comment left. We had
I'm not done yet.
interrupted.
That's okay. That's all right. That's what
I'm
you
gonna
get paid the
record-
big
I'm gonna
bucks for.
record myself saying that, just push the button.
Good enough. All right, so everyone here is pretty much on the same page. How about anyone out there in, do we have anybody online?
No.
But we do have somebody go ahead, Gary.
Thank you, Gary Haskin. I think the general discussion is going in the right directions. There's processes in place, developer agreements, PUDs, they're all there to welcome a developer for certain types of projects. That's when the negotiations can take place. If you want to cut developer fees, fine. If you want to do land, fine. But it's all confined. If you go out and cut fees immediately, you'll get what the developer wants. If you keep it in the planned development, then the city gets what it wants and gets decent senior housing.
That's our leverage. That's all we got.
That's all you got, is that leverage in those negotiations. Otherwise, you give it away the first time, and
Well,
like I
think-
said, you get what the developer says.
Exactly.
My fees are in half, okay, I'm gonna build this. Wait a minute, we don't want that. Fees are cut in half, I'm building what I wanna build.
Yep.
So I think that's the gist of pretty much where the discussion was going, but I wanted to sort of consolidate it, make sure I was on the right page
Thank you for
with you
imparting all
guys.
that.
Okay, thank you.
Gary. So anyway, we've asked everybody out there, we've had Gary, no one online? Okay, so we're gonna come back to the council, and what is it we're looking for here now?
It's a discussion
Just a
only.
discussion.
That was discussion only, so we have a discussion, so you'll bring it back to us again, I believe, next meeting?
Well, we have the senior housing workshop on April 26th at 6 PM.
So at that point, we'll bring it up again and discuss it?
Yeah, if that's the
I think
desire.
that at that workshop, right now, we should talk about what's going to be defined.
Yeah,
We're gonna
what
talk
the-
about
what
how
the
many
plan-
units, how many people we're gonna serve. Currently, we have 200+ people waiting on Heritage House with a 5-year wait list. Okay, so let's start with that number. How many units do we need a developer to build to house 200 people?
Let's keep that for the meeting, let's not go any
Well,
further.
I wanted to find it out so it doesn't get lost. The other thing is that I keep hearing, and I don't like it, is that the developer is the bad guy. It's us versus the developer. The developer's gonna get everything they want, we gotta get everything we want. It's not how it works. Developer's gonna build a product that they can sell to the customer. We are forgetting our basic economics. If it's not good, nobody's gonna buy it. They're going to build something nice. We keep worrying about this, like the developer's gonna build something, like Mr. Haskett said, that, and just rip us off. And that's not going to happen.
I didn't say they're gonna rip us off, I said they will build what they wanna build.
Thank you. Okay, that's enough. Let's move on. So that's pretty much, we'll take the balance of this and we'll move it to the next meeting. And then I think we'll move to the final item on the agenda this evening. Staff, you want to talk about?
Yeah, I would like the city council to consider review and approve the attached agenda policy. There have been different practices in the past regarding adding items to the agenda. To clarify for staff, council, and the public, staff has put together the attached policy for the city of Escalon. The policy outlines how a member of the city council or a public member would add an item to the agenda utilizing the attached form. Agendas are typically posted on the Thursday prior to a meeting, and all the timelines have taken this into consideration. A city council member would need to submit a form at least 8 days prior to a meeting. The 8 days gives staff time to get the necessary support of 2 other council members and create a staff report if necessary. A public member would need to submit a form requesting an item on the agenda, and it would be shared with the council at the following meeting. If the item is supported by the majority of the council, it would be placed on the next regular meeting. Any items that the requester would like to be included in the agenda, whether that be a council member or the public, must be submitted at least 6 days prior to the regular city council meeting. This allows staff time to review, integrate materials with the staff report. So attached to your staff report is the agenda policy and submittal form. And staff is recommending council review and accept the attached policy for the city of Escalon.
I have a comment. I don't have a problem with anything you've got here except one thing. I don't think 3 is reasonable. I think if there's 2 council members have something they want to bring to this council for discussion, that would be sufficient. That's what we did in the past. 3, to me, first of all, every individual here is elected by people in this community, and those people that elect those individuals have a reason for electing them. Now, that may not be the same reason that other people were elected, but you shouldn't chastise them because of that. So I think it's important to leave that avenue open. I think if you have 2, that's plenty. 3, I think what you're asking for is it's going to make it difficult for some people who want to get their things on the agenda. I think 2 is reasonable. I don't agree with the 3, but I do agree with everything else.
Recent practice has been majority, so that's why that was incorporated in there.
If that's a majority, I've never heard that before, and I've been on this council for 27 years, Tammy, and we've only had 2 people ever have to be, bring an item onto the agenda.
Well, it seems to me 1 is enough. If a council member wants to put something on the agenda, put it on the agenda.
I agree. I think this is ridiculous. I mean, to me, we're here as advocates for the community. We shouldn't be chastised. If there's somebody in this group who wants to bring up their item, let them bring it up. What's the harm in it?
Well, I mean, I guess because if you're utilizing staff time for that item and it's an item that may not be of the desire of the majority of the council, you could be utilizing staff time. That's probably where that comes from.
I appreciate the fact that staff is busy, but if it's that busy, you need to hire somebody else or find somebody who can deal with this. But the point is, I don't think we should do that. I just think it's chastising the input of this group.
Well, I think that's, 1 council member can make the request, but I think they need to follow, some time frame to get it on there, so you do have time to.
If it assists the council in their discussions, majority of the cities do not have 1. And it's usually because at some point, at some council, there will be a council member that asks staff to put a lot of random things that take up a lot of time, whether you call it ridiculous or not. There's certain cities that have fallen into city councils that have fallen into disarray just because 1 council member keeps putting things that infuriates everybody else and wastes staff time. So most of there are some cities that have a majority. There's some cities that have 2. I'm really not familiar with one with just 1, or I shouldn't say that, but the majority have at least 2 council members in order to put something on.
Well, then I see about that. I mean, I can see 2. I mean, versus 3. I can see 2 just as well, just like Mayor Elves said. Because more often than not, if the idea is a wacky idea,
You won't
okay,
get a
the other
second.
one's gonna be able to talk the other one off the ledge,
Pretty much.
okay? And so, but 2 seems to be fairly fail-safe, I think.
I
you know.
agree.
Now,
I won't
is this preclude the notion of a council member asking for a consensus item to put something on the next meeting's agenda at a meeting? Do they still have to fill out the form a day or 2 later?
No, come on.
No.
Yes.
They
But,
do?
I mean, that's what the policy is asking for.
Yeah.
For staff, it's hard to be prepared if we don't understand the full
Sure.
extent of the item. So it's not only to set a policy, but it's also to assist staff so that we can be prepared when we get this item on the agenda.
Well, that's why I think that the onus is on the council member asking for the consensus, and therefore the consensus of the council. I think the onus is on the council to make it very clear to staff what exactly they're asking for.
I mean,
And I think
it's-
you should feel free to be able to ask questions back. Hey, what exactly do you guys want? 'Cause that gives you a full 2 weeks,
It doesn't give us a full 2 weeks, because you have to understand, from this meeting, next Wednesday, our staff items have to be in, because our agendas are posted on Thursday. So we don't have a full 2 weeks typically between meetings to prepare. That's not, because by the time you prepare an agenda, you have to have time, your agendas are supposed to be prepared on Thursday, so that's not giving you the 2 weeks.
So why
But is there any harm?
less than 10
But
days.
is there any harm to have a council consensus to put something on, let's
So
say, 2
there's
meetings from now?
not.
You see what I'm saying? I'm just
I
trying to get
under-
away from, now you gotta go turn out, fill out a form,
It's,
that
I mean,
kind of
it's a
stuff.
simple form. It's not like I'm asking for,
It's even simpler,
We're working people. I still am. I'm busy. And I don't want to do any more than I've already dedicated myself to do. Now, if it was something that I felt was critical and I could see where it created a dysfunctional environment, of course, I'd agree to it. I would tolerate filling out the application, which I don't approve of, but I'd do that. But I don't think 3 is going to be, I cannot do 3. That's just crazy. Now, the other thing is, when somebody requests something and you don't have enough time, roll it over to the next meeting. You're just going to tell them, listen, we have time restraints here. You didn't get it to me in time, we can't do it this meeting, we'll do it next meeting. That's all you have to do. It doesn't have to be more rules, more paperwork. I just get tired of this.
But I also think that she should have the latitude, if we make a council consensus during a meeting.
Yes.
And if it's something that looks like it's gonna take a fair amount of staff time, say, hey, listen, do you mind putting this on 2 meetings from now versus
There you
the next
go.
meeting?
I
I
agree.
mean, I think you ought to be able to have the latitude to ask
And
the
that's
council that
reasonable.
too.
That's reasonable. I have no issue with that.
Was that something where one person's got an idea, wants something on an agenda, it may be some time on the city's, team's part, that it gets on the agenda as a short discussion of, I'd like to do this. Are we in agreement that the city staff can spend this much time to determine this so that we can talk about it in the next meeting?
There's that possibility. There's some
'Cause
flexibility.
if it's just a concern of staff time for how much we're gonna spend for one person wanting something on the agenda, we can skip that by going, it's on the agenda, we do a quick consensus if we wanna spend the city
That's
staff's time
reasonable.
on that, and then it can be on the next agenda.
I think we should recognize the importance of the issue as a group. If something comes up, and as a group we say, wow, this is pretty important, we need to get on this. Or, okay, well, no problem putting it on there, but it may not be this meeting, but it'll be the next meeting. I could deal with that too.
I mean, I think we owe it to staff if we do a consensus item to put something on the agenda, make it very clear what we're asking staff
Absolutely.
to do research on. And I think staff needs to have the latitude and the feeling that they can say, you know what, it's not gonna be on this next meeting's
And
agenda,
that's
how about
fine,
the following?
provided it's not something this council feels urgent.
Well, yeah.
Thank you. So again, I'm
Is that
not
as clear as mud
interested.
for you, Tammy?
just,
Has it been a problem? Has it been an issue with community or council getting items too
well,
close
I
to
mean,
the?
just most recently, how many items did we discuss during staff communications that were follow-up items? And it hinders, other deadlines, not always necessarily items for the council agendas, but definitely my other deadlines.
So we've been focused on council. How about communities? Are you getting a lot of requests for agenda items from the community?
Recently, I guess would be like the chicken coops, the backstop, those kinds of issues.
So,
And, oh yeah, that's right, another one coming
We'll have
next
one at the
weekend.
next meeting.
yeah, so I think it's important to lay some ground rules. I think as far as the council goes, I think, you know, you can communicate with us, and if it's a problem, we can address it. I think we also need some ground rules for the community, though, to make sure that they still, you know, give you time to do your staff report and everything, the same as you would do it for us, so I think it's important that we actually put some limits in there. We don't have anything on the books currently, right?
Correct, it's just been past practice.
So, you know, and the proposal here is that those timeframes work for you.
Yes.
So I don't have a problem with that. We change it to, you know, 2 council members can, you know, make the request and make it within that time frame. It applies to, you know, council has their restrictions, the community has their restrictions, to be considerate of staff time and the necessity for all the effort that goes into preparing staff reports and getting accurate information to everybody. So I have no problem with going forward with it, with that
Before you go
change.
forward. Okay, I can deal with the change as long as it's 2 council members. And the other thing I can deal with, if it's an urgent situation, we have the right to override it and push it forward.
I don't have a problem with that, but there's already rules in place for amending an agenda or emergency items being placed on the agenda that we got government.
Just so
codes.
we're clear on it, because
I would recommend that you suggest staff or allow staff to try to rework this to.
That's fine.
To what you've been discussing.
Very good.
As a staff with that.
all right, that works for me. Gentlemen, anybody else have a problem with it? All right, we're gonna let it come back to us.
No, but case in point,
Turn the lights back
case in
on.
point, the staff understand exactly what you were asking to amend it to.
Well, let's hear it again.
I don't think there's any changes other than just 2 council members.
That's it,
2
basically.
council members.
And then there's the emergency provision.
That works.
Mm-hmm.
And also adding taking the timeliness, in other words, each side's, essentially everyone's recognizing staff's potential needs, and it's not dictating anything, it's just in the policy that the council.
I think we're
members-
pretty aware of what's going on. I mean, we know, we hear it all the time.
And then to put what we're talking about into practice, can staff bring that back in the next meeting, or maybe it should be the next following meeting, depending on what you have going on? I mean, you know,
All right, so it's coming back next meeting. Let's move on to,
is that right?
So Tammy, is that okay for the next meeting? Or do you need it?
It's fine.
all right, let's look at council communications. Let's start with Councilman Bellinger.
I think I'm good for the night, thanks.
Councilman Swift.
All done.
Councilman, crummy, names, I can't remember. Go ahead.
So I got about 10 things. No, I'm just kidding.
It's okay, because you won't get that time.
I'm done.
I'm ready to go home. Vice Mayor?
Nothing, thank you.
Nothing, and what was, I had a couple things here. I just wanted to mention to those that may know Vinnie had passed away.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bummer. Vinnie Stans had passed away. He contacted Covent, and unfortunately, he was also a diabetic, and so we lost a very good guy in town here, just for your guys' information. And I want to thank you again for all you've done and all you continue to do. Keep it up. You're an inspiration. You got twice the energy of guys a 30-year age. We have the meeting on the 26th, I believe. At what time? 6:30?
6 PM.
6 p.m. All right, and then the third Wednesday's when you guys meet at the park at 2 p.m. Is that correct, Ann?
Yes.
Okay, it's been answered. And I guess we're good to go. Meeting adjourned. All right, gentlemen, another fun evening on the way to bed. Work tomorrow. My little